I think that in the last 3 decades has had technocratic impositions, people wanting to revert to global institutions. Oh, the EU says this, or the World Bank, or the IMF, or the WHO, whatever it is, rather than taking responsibility here, because what we've seen is an increasing chasm between politicians who all look and sound very much the same now. And I think the problem is that we've got technocrats that firstly people often don't believe. Then if they do believe them, they let them down. And this is why together we're saying we've got to be the leaders. We've got to put pressure locally, regionally, nationally. That's what we've been doing the last 3 years, encouraging people, boots on the ground, put pressure on the elected representatives. But if they can't do it, get out of the way.
Right, Alan, how you doing, man?
Good to see you, Peter.
Yeah,
I'm good.
To see you, mate. All right. I think we should start. Explain to people what Together Declaration is, and then I think we've got a fuckload to get through.
Yeah. So basically, Together Declaration was formed just over 3 years ago, which is at our third year event at Westminster. Great few thousand people. We basically, what happened was Boris Johnson said he was going to have Freedom Day, and by the way, we're going to have vaccine passports. And we were like, what? And so I spoke to a number of people, campaigners, organisers, business people, people of faith, secular people, and citizens who'd been arguing in various arenas and forms against some of the concerns, the draconian measures, whether it's about free speech, whether it's about being able to get together, the lockdowns, the impositions, all of those things. And said, we need to get together, let's meet. And we met all in a room, about 150 of us at a club. We come from clubs, it's where my heart was.
Boy.
And basically, we came up with saying we could put something together that could represent a sort of umbrella opposition to some of the really authoritarian measures that were happening, and to insist on a proper public debate about things, not just shutting down Parliament, not just imposing things, not just technocratic attacks on us, but actually weighing up costs and benefits and discussing with the public, this very disdainful and contemptuous what was happening, with lots of nudge and fear PR. And we knew that at the time, but obviously since then, now in hindsight, everything from the lockdown files, the Twitter files, all the things we've seen, the WhatsApp messages, all of that stuff, the spy units, everything. So we basically launched, we got a few 100,000 signatories. We subsequently then took that to Parliament, to 10 Downing Street, along with signatures against mandatory vaccinations. And we did campaigns against vaccine passports. I'd previously come from hospitality. Mm-hmm. And we ran something called Open for All, where we got thousands of operators to say they would not ask for papers, please. In Britain, they just wouldn't do that, which is very brave for operators because they have to have licenses and they can be taken at any time. And that level of fear and all of that was going on at the time, you're killing people, and it's obviously nerve-wracking if you're trying to be part of a community and serve people, right, and be there for them. But they were very brave and they did that. But obviously, just in a sector, people go, well, you would say that, you want to open up and make money, and it's really crass, right? They just think, oh, that's just what everyone. It's not like we can be citizens as well as running a business. Which would consider it for the people. So anyway, we launched that, and then we had a number of key pillars and principles. One of them was no lockdowns ever. I mean, you got to do sort of a proper cost benefit analysis of certain, just never been done before, just imposing it on people, damaging, harmful. We now see the collateral damage across the board everywhere, but we were saying that.
We're still living it.
We're absolutely, and we should talk about that some more. But
well, let me say, I got COVID totally wrong. Let's just be honest, I can't hide from it. When the first lockdowns happened, I was like,
Can I just shake your hand for saying that? And I wish more people could just be honest and say things like that, particularly in politics, because we'd be in a much better place.
Well, listen, yeah, but there's a resistance to admitting you were wrong, where actually it's quite freeing when you do it. No, so what happened was, I remember the first lockdown was coming. So I interviewed a doctor who was working at one of the London hospitals, and he just explained how they went from a trickle of people to an emergency coming in. And then I saw the Sky News thing in Italy.
Yeah.
As a good bit of reporting at the time, because there were a lot of people going to hospital. And I was about to go out to Turkey because Erdogan was kicking all the refugees out of Turkey. So I was going to one of the refugee camps to kind of film it.
Yeah.
And I knew it was coming. And then I came back and I supported the first lockdown. I was like, I think we need this. Because I don't think I really thought it through. The idea that actually you can't really stop a virus. But by obviously within a few weeks, certainly the second one, I was like, fuck this shit, and I was ignoring it. But I got vaccinated and regret it.
Okay.
I got I didn't let my daughter get vaccinated herself, but because we were meant to go to New York to a Billie Eilish concert, right?
Yeah.
And she had to be vaccinated to go. I was like, that's not happening. I got vaccinated myself to go and see my dad in Ireland, and I fully regret it. I 100% regret it, and fell for all of it.
Well, the thing is that at the start, when that day that everyone will remember where they were and what they were doing, when Boris says, well, you'll now have to go and stay at your homes, everything, and I made loads of phone calls. Some people have been watching it before. Obviously, it was a bit distant in China. I'd been in New York, and I was talking to people who'd done sort of emergency response around FEMA and everything, and we were looking at the Diamond Princess, the cruiser ship, and I'm like, all these old people are on there. And if this thing is like the Black Plague, it's just weird that they're not all dead straight away. These are very vulnerable, high risk. But at that time, I was saying, and I've got an uncle who got swine flu in Florida on his way back, and he was in a coma, and I said goodbye to him, and he came through. But I was like, look, I'm saying these things, but I'm not being flippant. If you've got a precondition, if you've got an existing condition, or if you're old or when my mum, we were doing certain things at the start, who knew, even though I'd seen what happened in China, and it was all a bit dubious, some of the way the reporting was and everything, and I was very...
People collapsed on the street.
All that wild stuff. But also I was like, look, you want to be a bit responsible. You don't just want to be that guy like going, no. There's an element in which you go, look, we're part of a society. There are people who are at risk. But that was the point that was so worrying. And even my mum was like, I was washing the stuff that was coming through. She'd be like, the people that are delivering this, and they're, why isn't everyone dead everywhere? And I'm like, yeah, mum. I mean, it's like that. And so, look, we're all finding out things all the time. I've never understood and still don't understand some of the things that have happened. And actually, together, the interesting thing, our steering group and our board, we don't all agree on some of the reasons or what's happening, but we do agree on the way we can stop it, which is to get as much of the public to engage and challenge it and say that we are going to say no to this and we're going to hold you accountable and, representatives. So,
can I tell you what I think one big issue with that is? I don't think we have a culture of freedom in this country, not like America. I mean, you've lived in America, right?
Yeah.
I've spent a lot of time there. They actually have a culture of freedom because they fought a war to get rid of us. But they have a culture of freedom. They think about freedom and liberty a lot. It exists in the UK, but I don't think it culturally exists. And I also think there's a large part of the country who consider government as the ultimate authority, whereas I think I think government should be servants of us and as small and as least influential as possible. But that's only through going through all this shit, right? But I don't think we have that broad culture of freedom and liberty. It's
interesting. People say that it's definitely the case that in America and that with the Constitution and the amendments, the rights to free speech and those liberties based on the Enlightenment, that's enshrined in their whole way of life. And, everything about signing allegiance and even when they sing the national anthem, all of that's imbued with it, right, in a different sense to ours. But we should remember, of course, that we had a civil war, parliamentarians transforming things. We had people putting their lives on the line for free speech. I mean, from the Reformation onwards, the whole idea that we could have our own conscience, and that developed into kind of political consciousness. The idea, even, throughout the later in the 19th and the 20th centuries, freedom marches and people, not just civil rights, but general strikes and the whole idea of people being engaged and standing on the shoulders of the ideas of Enlightenment thinkers that said we can dare to know, we can use our reason, we can execute our judgment, and we can stand together as citizens. I mean, one of the unresolved, why we still have the House of Lords thing from all of that, from Cromwell and Parliament, was that it went a certain distance perhaps, but then there was always this morbid fear of the mob, right? And it was enshrined in a different way. And we've got a very strong sovereign state, even though they're weak authoritarians at the moment. And that's what's different a bit to what happened in Europe and parts of Australia and Canada and elsewhere, because I think that even though we got weak authoritarians there was more of a sense of British institutions being really developed. So we didn't see quite some of the things we saw in Spain and in Italy and parts of France and certainly in Canada. So there's an element in which I can understand what you're saying, I agree with you, but I also think that the sentiment of freedom and fair play and decency, being fair in Britain, is really, really important. But, there's no doubt in the last 20, 30 years, people have become far more isolated from one another.
Yep.
But those lockdown demos and other things that have happened subsequently, and we've seen from the truckers and we've seen in Europe, even though we've had this kind of sense that we've become more isolated, that sense of being together and a bit of solidarity, and people that didn't know each other or wouldn't necessarily have got on. This is the other thing that's interesting, right? Lots of people, I mean, I fell out with people, I lost friends, but I met a whole new set of people that I admired and respected, and some of which I really disagree with on some issues, right? So you find yourself with these strange bedfellows and you say, but on these principles, this is where we stand. It's a bit like, here I stand, I can do no other, to paraphrase someone.
Well, I think but I do think it's changing. So I'm with you. I think it's changing. The reason I think it is that we had 14 years of a pretty shitty Conservative Party, and I'm a conservative-minded person. And I think the reason Labour won the election is because people they didn't want any more of this Conservative bollocks. But what they've got is something they didn't realise they were going to get, which was even worse, which is more attacks on freedoms, higher taxes, more borrowing, more debt, more socialism. And that's why I think it's turned around very quickly. It's become very bad for Labour. And yet then you look back to the Conservative Party, and I don't think Kemi's offering a lot at the moment. So with that, I think people are going, oh, holy shit, it is a them and us. It's that institution of government that is a problem. And I think that's the positive that's coming out of it.
So I think that in the last 3 decades has had technocratic impositions, people wanting to revert to global institutions. Oh, the EU says this, or the World Bank, or the IMF, or the WHO, whatever it is, rather than taking responsibility here, because what we've seen is an increasing chasm between politicians who all look and sound very much the same now. I mean, when I say look and sound, I say they all go to the same schools. It's not like in the past, they all come from different backgrounds and everything, even though everyone's talking about diversity all the time. And from really Blair onwards and the Cameron years, we've had technocrats, and they're kind of indistinguishable, and they've had not had a real relationship with constituents, and they've had a kind of very contemptuous view of the public. And so the public's become less and less engaged, more and more estranged. But I think something's changing, and it has been changing, which is this populist impulse and sense that that's not the case. Now, obviously, we could talk about America and what's happened, which is just phenomenal. But I think here as well, what has happened is that people have been asking all sorts of questions, whether it's about free speech, whether it's about things like Southport, whether it's about two-tier policing, whether it's about why some people can behave in a certain way, but others can't. And I think the problem is that both with Labour and Conservative, in a way, they've both had an existential crisis, right? Labour with momentum, the old kind of Tory idea of neocons mixed with libertarians and one nation Tories, it's under strain, right? Because you've got a moment where you have to go, well, why are people not connected with their constituents? You've got the lion's share of British people who have some very clear views, and the way you keep people honest is you have the public and the demos engaged and involved, right? And that's how you keep them honest. The problem is these technocrats are so far estranged from where ordinary people are, right? They want things to work. They want to earn better money. No one ever said, oh, I want my kids to be worse off than me, right? They want to be aspirational. They want to have great education. They want to go abroad on holiday. They want to expand their horizons. We've got people that just have contempt quite often for the public. And I think that it was unforgivable what happened post-Brexit, right? Here you've got a proper instruction. You can't get it clearer, right? Go and do this. And yet, we've seen what happened. And then on top of that, we all got locked away. And I think it wasn't so much that Labour won this election, it's that no one wanted to vote for the Tories, they wanted to punish them. And very quickly, as you say, quite rightly, right, then all these other measures, I mean, who knew, right? Labour's going to attack the pensioners, the students, the farmers, everyone.
Yeah.
And so, but what I'm encouraged about and excited about is that this spirit, this indomitable spirit of but freedom, and also the idea that, you know, like in Britain, we've got one of these things, which is, this is like being British in our home. It's a remarkable thing. And people often do it down, right? They put it down. There's like, oh, this and the historically that and decolonize this. And it's like this contempt for the past. And it's like saying everything everyone's done is terrible. But actually growing up in Britain has been a remarkable opportunity, right? We've had, you know, and it's a brilliant country, but it's got big problems. And one of the problems is we've become sclerotic. We're not as even though we're the sixth biggest economy, we have not got the kind of thing we had in the 18th, 19th century, that engineering, innovation, industrial transformation, the can-do thing that you see maybe in China and India, right? Much more. You speak to young...
Nigeria?
Absolutely. Parts of Africa. There's really exciting things happening. Latin America, all over the world, right? Where infrastructure projects, IT, tech, biomedicine. We need more of that, right? We need to have a dynamic prosperity, right? And people keep saying, oh, you know, what about the NHS, the Holy Grail? How do these things get paid for, right? And I think the problem is that we've got technocrats that firstly people often don't believe. Then if they do believe them, they let them down. And this is why at Together we're saying, you know, it sounds like a new age thing. At Together, we always say, we've got to be the leaders. We've got to put pressure locally, regionally, nationally. That's what we've been doing the last 3 years, encouraging people, boots on the ground, put pressure on the elected representatives. But if they can't do it, get out of the way, right? We can decide what happens in this country. We are the future. It's about us, our friends and neighbours, the ones they call gammons, the one they've got contempt from, calling us names all the time. I mean, it's mad, right, people?
Well, mate, they're not real people. That's the problem.
Yeah.
It's like I said to you before we started. Cannot stand the Labour Party because I just don't agree with socialism, right? But I respect the views that people have that come from a working class background. You know, my dad was an engineer, my mum was a nurse. They work fucking hard, right?
Yeah.
I get it. I disagree with Angela Rayner on everything, but I like her. And the reason I like her is she's real. She's proper working class. She represents working class people. She understands the people where she's from. And I loved seeing her rave in Ibiza. And when conservative people attacked her for that, I was like, you're a dick. Like, she is out there having fun. And I was cool with that. But everybody else, I'm like, who do I relate to here? How do I relate to Rishi Sunak? I can't. Don't know anything about it. And this is why I think Reform have done well. Farage, you see him having a pint and a fag. He's like, I have a pint and a fag. Or, you know, you see Rupert Lowe and you're like, he likes football. I like football. And I think we've got these career politicians who are student debaters, or they've been trade unionists, or they're lawyers. They're not people you relate to. It's not you. Like, I instantly relate to you. I'm like, oh, I'm going to be mates with Alan. We're going to have a beer. We're going to be friends, right? These people, I cannot fucking relate to them.
Yeah.
And I think that's, then they can't relate to us.
Yeah. I mean, it's a big problem, but it's going to change. We're going to have a whole tsunami tidal wave of, and we can come on to talk about this, but some of the things that are happening with farmers, we've seen it with the attack on drivers, 37 million drivers in Britain. They want to shut all our streets. We've seen such brilliant leaders locally who know more about the council, about what's going on in their areas, small business runners, people that are like workers, carers in the community that have just volunteered and got involved and protested and challenged and holding people to account. It's been so inspiring, right? This is post the lockdown thing, but like emergency traffic orders, all the things brought in during lockdowns, right? And saying, oh, you got to do this, oh, net zero, oh, the air. You're like, hold on a minute. Who have you discussed this with? Where is the mandate for any of this? Where is the like scrutiny in this conversation? Why are you not talking about things like UK 100 and C40 cities and the funding of people like Christopher Hone and Bloomberg and others, and the fact that all of this is being done and like sort of capturing our local authorities with big money. Yet you talk about big oil all the time. And by the way, do you know that cars represent freedom and people being able to have mobility for people? And you're like locking down our cities. And we haven't agreed to all of this. And on it goes. And Angela Rayner says, be prepared for that to come to every city. We're going to be on the march. She's got a great accent. I've seen her be very funny, right? But the thing is, it's not just about where you've come from. And I get your point. I think the really essential point is, what are you about? Are you going to be principled about your politics? You're going to hold the line on it, right? And we've seen far too many people fold. There's like, you know, flaky, or they get incentives. And Together, we're making the point, like, these are our principles, right? They're not shakeable. They're not negotiable. They're not negotiable for money. They're not negotiable for political power. These are our points. They're around freedom of speech. They're around autonomy, no surveillance, privacy, around the fact that we shouldn't have impositions like central bank digital currency with digital ID mandatory. All these measures that are coming down the line, we're saying we need proper debate. The public needs to be heard. And that informs all of the campaigns that we're doing, right? Whether it's about assisted dying bill, whether it's about keeping cash, whether it's about the free speech issues, which is without free speech, without being able to do this, we don't have any other freedoms. And I think that what we'd like, I'd encourage everyone, all the people that are watching this and all that, the more we have people get involved, the more people can shape it themselves, the less the sense it's all just going to happen, whether it's a plan or not, and it's all just going to happen to us. But this is the great thing in America, right? The sense that we can do something, right, and transform things. And look, what's just happened there is just astounding, right? And that mixture of people that are now in that new, I call it a populist front, really. But I mean, it's just incredible, exciting, dynamic. And it really demonstrates that no matter how powerful, and this is like the Brexit moment as well, and also the challenge to lockdowns and vaccine mandates, which, by the way, was about choice, not about the particular thing at the time. It was about people being able to make a choice, is that you got a situation where people are saying, you can't just flannel us all the time. And the more you try and call people names, the more you say you're all just far right and you're all just neo-Nazis, which, by the way, when some people are doing neo-Nazi signs and they are saying things that are fascistic on the streets, or they are against democracy or against women or against gay people, and all that's going on in our streets and no one's saying some of that. But the more you call ordinary people that because they got concerns about borders or migration or about integration or about education, or the more people are going to react and respond and go, you know what, you're just mugging us all off and we're not going to have it.
Yeah, I mean, look, that I find the term populism really interesting, right? Because it's used as a pejorative. Oh, Trump's a populist or Farage is a populist. And, when you dig into forget all the fact that they say, populists ignore the complexities of these situations. It's used to insult the kind of and degrade the things that these people are saying.
Yeah.
Trump's a populist, Farage is a populist. But what are they saying? Well, they say, they're trying to pit us as there's an elite against the peasants. That's fucking what's happening. There is an elite. They're all corrupt. They steal. They give their mates projects. They borrow endless money. They cause high inflation. They tax us to shit. There is absolutely an elite that's against us. It's not a conspiracy. We can see it. We're all fucking experiencing it. But I also hate this right wing used as a pejorative. Oh, he's right wing. I'd say, well, what do you mean by that? If you mean he's a Nazi, yeah, I'm with you. I don't agree with that. You mean he's got conservative values?
Yeah, exactly.
He believes in the family. Yeah. Believes in the unity, good education for the kids. What's your issue with that? I'm happy to be right wing if that's the case. So I think I'm with you, and I think what's going to happen, they're going to look at America, and I know there'll be lots of lefties who think Trump's the end of the world. But you've got Elon Musk, a successful businessman, saying let's make government more efficient. Vivek himself could have been a president. He's got the right character, smart as shit, successful.
Yeah.
Tulsi was a Democrat. RFK. You've got these smart, if interesting, non-establishment, kind of non-establishment people coming in and making a difference. And this is why I like Rupert Lowe. You double check this for me, Connor. I think Rupert Lowe isn't taking his MP salary.
That's right. What he's doing, he's giving every month, he's giving it away to different charities in his constituency. Yeah. Rupert has been brilliant.
Politicians need fuck you money. They do. Yeah. And we need to, there was this debate recently where they wanted to raise the politician's salary to 92 grand. All these people were like, this is fucking terrible. I'm like, raise it to $500,000. Let's pay these fuckers really well. And let's get good people in these jobs. Not these career politician fucking idiots.
So I think that...
controversial, that one.
Well, it's not like I wouldn't be paying them $500,000 necessarily, but I think that there's firstly, there's a lot of merit in having worked. Whether you run a business, set it up, or whether you're a miner, or a steel worker, or a shop owner, or a daughter of a shop owner, or a son of a daughter. In the past, that was the composition of both the Labour Party and the Tories was much more like that, and others, Social Democrats and Liberals. Yeah. We've lost that now. As you say, it's a bit of a homogenous little group. And it's great to have smart people, but the thing about the people who think they're all smart is that they've all veered towards a very particular set of ideas, and they all like Keir Starmer says, he'd rather be at Davos than in Westminster. The thrash of ideas, the clash of ideas, and that's why the whole attempt to push it away from Parliament as well, and to have it more localised, and not have back to the English Civil War and the Revolution and creating of parliamentary democracy. The high point is it's not parliamentary democracy that's the issue. The issue is that it's become so degraded in the sense of the lack of relationship to and representation of the public, and the notion that the public, in the abstract sense, you don't think it's about my mate and all that, but the idea that the public are dirty, they're problematic, they're dangerous, mad, bad, and dangerous. We saw it on steroids during COVID and lockdown, right? This whole you're infectious. But the idea before
we saw it with Southport. You said bad words.
Absolutely. Happened before then, right? The whole idea that, all the time we have to be managed. I saw it when I was in hospitality with the whole licensing conversation that somehow everyone's terrible. I grew up when everyone in Britain used to have fights every Friday, Saturday night. It's a joke with the old police. There's Friday fight night. Tear-ups, bottles, Now, young people out there, they're talking about the kind of mix of their cocktail and vol-au-vents. I'm like, there's hardly ever a fight. What are you talking about? Antisocial behaviour, public space protection orders, zoning, more cameras, surveillance. I'm like, calm down.
Alan, I own a bar.
Yeah. Do you?
Yeah, fuck the amount of shit. My bar
Where is it? What's it called?
Bedford. It's called Auction Room.
Oh, brilliant.
On a busy night, you can get 230 people in there. Honestly, the fucking license. Sometimes we had one noise complaint. We had 6 visits. We had to have fucking decibel. It's like one noise complaint. It's like, come on.
No. Well, so when I spent a lot of time. I started my life doing this in acid house parties. So I put on a lot of parties like that around the world. And then when it all became licensed and everything in the UK, I co-founded the Old Truman Brewery in Brick Lane. And we ended up having a place called the Vibe Bar for 20 years and doing all that. And
get a good curry down there.
Good curry. But people like the World Bank and all that started talking about it as an example of regeneration and done in a way that had never been done before. 20 buildings, 11-acre site, hundreds of thousands of square foot. We put on all sorts of different creatives and everything and transformed an area. And then, now when you think about that and the impact, the multiplier effect of the economy and jobs and, Tower Hamlets dined out on it. It was a great place to be and people paid much more for property developers. Everything came in and it was a good news story. Then all of a sudden, we're getting these mad moments happening with the police, right? Oh, this and that. And we're like, what's going on? We've had a great relationship for years and all that. And we were busy and we used to have festivals there and events. But basically, Sir Bernard Hogan Howe, because they're under pressure for resources and being told you've got to deal with cybercrime and terrorism, and by the way, you've got 40% less resource, right? They just decided, this would be an idea. We'll just chop the legs off this because it's overtime and it's an issue. And he's like, well, so it's all lovely. You make money from it. But if you want to reduce crime, we need 50% of them to go. And basically, that was a recognition then of the whole way that they look at things. There's this kind of the technocrat look at things, right? They don't think about consequences. It's a bit like saying we'll have this net zero arbitrary thing. What are the consequences? Is this real? What does it mean for business? Have you scoped this out? Are you a gamer, right? Can you game this out and see where this is going? Because it ain't going to happen the way you're talking about it unless we're all shut down and the lights are off. And in the same way, right? So we have this situation and then they're all realizing, right, okay, well, all these clubs are shutting down. We're losing money and revenue. By the way, we haven't got eyes and ears on the street and people are they're doing things, but they're not licensed venues and they're all unlicensed and they're doing them all over the place and different. And all of a sudden it's not what you thought it would be, right? And it's a problem and people are like, oh my goodness. And, from fashion to hotels to retail, music, this is one of our key exports, right? Our soft power. So I was involved in that for a long time. And we actually did really well. We launched something called the Nighttime Industry Association. We got lots of people. We got people. I said, the two things we got to do, we got to get the police at the table and councils. And I'm like, I want to sit there and not flannel each other. People take drugs, talk about it. What are you going to do? How do they get to the club? We ain't making them in the club. So if you're going to hold us accountable, how about we hold you accountable for them coming into the country? What are they doing in the real conversations, right? Look, and they like that, right? Funnily enough, the police, the council sometimes not as much, but we did really well in being able to reshape a discussion about the benefits and values of having people, destination hubs. We're not all scum. We're not all violent. This is our brothers and sisters and friends and neighbours. It's our community, right? And this is great. It's transforming roads, streets, neighbourhoods, pop-up street foods like Asian night markets. We got everyone on the roll, right? We got that. We met with Boris when he was the mayor of London and then Sadiq Khan and then Andy Burnham, and we got people appointed as nighttime ambassadors and everything. Some of it didn't quite work out as we advised. They decided they would appoint political people, and we said, don't do that. But in any case, we transformed the discussion, and I was speaking internationally on it, on how to develop cities. And we basically made a lot of changes. And then all that great work about people coming together, transforming things, working together, then the shutters came down and lockdowns came. And that was a lot of years' work, and having transformed it. So the thing is, because again, you know, Boris's U-turn, the whole, I have one discussion, and the social media, the fear, the panic, the weak authoritarians, for whatever reason, people think he or they did that. The consequences have been catastrophic. You know, over 20,000 hospitality venues lost, many more suffering ongoing. That's just hospitality, right? Across the board with the economy, our children, the consequences for learning, what have or have not been harms that we're all looking at now in terms of the jab. More broadly, you know, often you can't discuss those things: censorship, free speech, spies that were sent to like the Rapid Response Unit, the Counter Disinformation Unit, which is being brought back in again. Oh, lovely. You know, this whole climate, people used to talk about before Diana and after Diana, right? When she died. I mean, before lockdown and after lockdown, and how much the worlds and cities have changed. But with that, there's this been great sense that actually, if we step up and challenge things like the vaccine mandate, we can actually put an end to it. And they can't necessarily get what they want. And this is what I want to say, this one thing to remind everyone, right? Sometimes it can just seem like it's insurmountable. All these organizations, all this money, all this MSM and all that. But actually, what is infectious is that spark of sense of freedom. When you stand with a few people and you see it, right, listen, if you can see it with teams that work well together, if you have a few people that are prepared to stand, that's exciting and inspiring for others, and that spreads. And when you start showing that you can win something, that spreads. And we've seen that more and more with things like people challenging low traffic neighbourhoods. They've done it again in Bristol, in Warwick, and different places. They've had them kicked out. We've seen it in a number of different areas. We've certainly seen it with the farmers last few weeks, right? Wales, London,
Scotland today,
Truro, Scotland today, exactly. Dorset. The next one in London is the 11th of December. Big things. And this is not going to stop now just with the inheritance tax. No. A bit like the truckers. There's a whole range of issues about technocrats who are contemptuous about everyone. And I think they thought, oh, they're just a bunch of Tory voters and a few aristocratic landowners. No one will care. All the city guys will be with us. They're not our voters anyway. A bit like they did with the pensioners. And people are like, what?
The humble bee. A keystone species crucial to the survival of Earth's inhabitants. Here's how things would look if bees vanished. And here's how they'd look if humans vanished. But imagine if instead we became a keystone species by doing things the right way, by taking responsibility for our actions, and becoming the solution. Iron mines the world's most responsible currency the right way. Because the future depends on it.
Did you? Mark Andreessen just went on Rogan, and they were discussing whether the current election that just happened, the recent one, was the first internet election. And Rogan said it was, and Mark Andreessen said, maybe, I think the next one will be. But one of the big deciding factors was the fact that Trump went on that roadshow, did all those different podcasts. Yeah. Like, kind of didn't give a fuck about the mainstream media. I mean, I don't know about you. I mean, I used to defend the BBC, and I still think there's parts of the BBC that are good. Some of their Radio 5 sports coverage, but generally it's just a fucking. I don't understand the BBC anymore. I think it's mental. And I've started to just get my news from social media, which obviously they hate because they want to call everything misinformation, and podcasts. And we've got this kind of dissemination of information now coming out from independent sources. And so Trump goes on Theo. By the way, did you see him on Theo Von, where Theo Von was discussing cocaine with him?
Yeah.
His addiction. It was brilliant. There was a real moment where you saw Trump with some empathy. Like he wanted to understand. He has 3 hours on Rogan. He's talking about MMA and the fights he likes.
Yeah.
You know, this these are the news sources people are starting to trust now.
Totally.
And they're scared of them. I mean, there's a bunch of stuff this week, people scared of Rogan.
Yeah.
They're scared of these decentralized sources because nobody controls them. If we have more of that here in the UK, the BBC's fucked, Sky News is fucked. And then what will happen is the politicians that will win will be the ones who go on podcasts and have open, free 2-hour discussions, not 5-minute sound bites on question time.
Well, it's a great advert for your show.
This is my show.
Everyone roll up.
Yeah,
I'm going to
go.
recommend everyone to come on here. But I really agree with you. Even though we've all been in this world for some time, and friends of ours do podcasts, we do some podcasts together, we do it. Listening to particularly the Joe Rogan podcast with Donald Trump and JD Vance.
Yeah, that JD Vance one, wow.
And I'm just like, this is unheard of. The idea that people sometimes like they'll roll their sleeves up and have a beer and they'll have a burger and they'll say, oh, we're of the people. And then they'll go to the next shoot, right? This thing where you sit down and you engage with people. And they were saying at the time, Kamala won't do it, right? And it was astonishing to listen to it and to think that, it's not that I don't necessarily want a politician to be just like everyone else. So I kind of do in some ways. I want them to understand things about us, to be from us. They can be exceptional as well, right? So it's not they have to be just like sitting on a sofa doing something. But the thing about that was the ability to actually engage and interact openly and honestly. I would have asked a few other questions as well if I was Joe Rogan, as it happens, but it was fascinating. And I think this is really important. I think it will also put pressure on anything that is remaining as the MSM to get better. But you know what they really are saying, don't you, Peter? What they're saying is that we, the people, can't cope hearing things. They're saying we're so stupid and so backwards that if someone comes and says something, we all go and follow them like zombies. That we don't have the discretion, the judgment, the ability to say, actually, that's nonsense. You're talking bollocks, right? And this is what they can't get their heads around. They keep proving why they're losing because they think that the American public, the majority, has been brainwashed by a mixture of Joe Rogan, Elon Musk, Trump, and this kind of nastiness. And they haven't understood all the people from the Appalachians to Pennsylvania to Carolinas look at all those states and the maps from Florida to the West Coast who are just like, we're sick of being treated like this. Have a listen to it, right? Have a listen to ordinary people, everyday people, great Americans, the public, not garbage. Not the deplorables, but Americans, right? We're not happy with it. We want productivity. We don't want all this stuff, this ideological stuff in our schools, in our institutions, right? We want to be free. We want to make money. We want to be, we want to live decent lives. Stop mugging us off. It's the same message here. And if the media here, it's just one tiny example, right? The BBC Verify. It's hilarious. You couldn't make it up, but it's insulting. Your BBC Verify saying that they're stopping misinformation and everything, and they're reposting or using sources like Labour activists to say there's only 500 farms who are going to be impacted.
Well, it's come out today in the Telegraph. 5 times more farms are affected than Rachel Reeves said.
Yeah.
5 times.
Listen, some of the stats are being presented like 70,000 family farms across Britain. I think the point is that they've just gone and done this. The Treasury have come out with hocus pocus figures. DEFRA don't agree with them. You can see that they've gone, we'll just knock this one out because no one's paying attention as well. And then they're like, oh, hold on. And this is the problem. When people say, don't just mug us off, don't treat us with contempt. And I think there's going to be a real reckoning. And threatening to put people in prison because they ask questions or speculate or say things like, we just had a load of kids stabbed, some have been killed, and some parents. Does that sound like a normal crime in Britain? Even gang crimes, right? Gang crimes aren't doing that, right? So to speculate what that might be is entirely reasonable, right? What you're going to tell me, we're going to go to prison for that. But you can speculate that everyone is far right or everyone's a neo-Nazi who asks questions about borders, who goes to a protest or even might have sympathy with a protest. Now, I'm not saying people that went and burnt something down, they should be treated under the law. Yeah. But everyone should. Why is it that since Southport, when you had the Tottenham riots, some people got put in prison, but then there was whole discussions with the community and everything. All right, why hasn't that happened with Southport? We've got all these situations going on that demonstrates two-tier policing, two-tier judiciary, weaponising the judiciary like with some tin pot like dictatorship. It's very interesting. I don't know if you've spoken to Harry Miller before. You should get him on the show. He's great, but he does We Are Fair Cop, and he's just, he was asked to come into a police station about an article he wrote. And you've got these issues like with Alison Pearson of non-crime hate incidents, more Orwellian or Kafka you can't get, or then trying to graduate it into a gold standard like terror idea, or with the discussions we've seen around people that go to Tommy Robinson marches and the Free UK. They're not just Tommy Robinson, but others. The idea that we speculate or ask questions and then we get a knock on the door or imprisoned when the police aren't coming to burglaries and things like that. This all needs to change.
Oh, listen, let me tell you this story. Bit noisy out there today.
That's in support.
Yeah, you're agreeing with us. I had a guy recently. I bought a new car. I was driving at home, coming down the street. The car's coming the other way, so I stop. This guy drives into the back of me. Not a lot of damage.
Yeah.
But my exhaust went through his light, and his light ended up in my exhaust. And I said to the guy, went out there and said to him, look, I need your details. He's like, I'm not giving them. So you've driven to the back of me. It's like, no, it's your fault. You braked hard. I said, look, even if that's true, it's still your fault. When you go in the back of somebody, it's your fault. Give me your details. He went no and drove off. But I had a photo of his car.
Yeah.
You could see the hole in his light, and I had the part of his light that was in my car, right? So I reached out to the police, and I said to the police, yeah, this has happened. Here's the details. It would have taken someone a small amount of time to go and get that piece of plastic from his light, go to his car, match it and go, yes, this is clearly the same light.
Yeah.
And also, I've got the photo. I think there's enough evidence there, right, to do it.
Yeah.
They came out and said, there's not enough evidence. Yet, how many times have we seen people getting knocks on the door? Alison Pearson, Bernie, all these people knocks on the door for saying things on Twitter. And look, a lot of the things that people have been arrested for said, I don't agree with. Some of it I think is fucking vile. But at the same time, it's like you have to understand the downstream consequences of putting people in jail for saying things. Personally, I would repeal all hate speech laws. I think they're a disaster.
Absolutely.
But people struggle with that idea.
Yeah. Well, we're good. We can struggle and debate and discuss, and we win hearts and minds. But the thing is, who's deciding what hate speech is? That's the first point. Now we're being told it's hateful. I could say, I don't like the look of your cup. And you can say, well, that's offending me, and I'm very sensitive, and I'm a cup, actually. So the fact that you said that I don't like the look, so it's so deeply traumatizing, so that's hateful. That's where we've got to, right? So we've got to a point where some people are saying some things are hateful, but of course it's not hateful if you say certain things, like if you have to go on certain demonstrations and you shout all sorts of things, that's not hateful apparently. If you go up on monuments and pull them down or even just do things on them, maybe that's not hateful. It's not, okay, it's understandable, people are upset and annoyed. You're like, okay, so some things are not hateful, like chanting lots of things and saying stuff. I do not want any chanting things like that stopped. I mean, obviously, if you start chanting, if you're going to say, I'm coming to kill you, right, or I'm paying to, there's words that are different to just reflections and talking.
Violence.
Yeah. But the thing is, I think we need to have unadulterated free speech. You know why? Because the antiseptic of light is an antiseptic, the reasonable for people. And when we thrash these things out and we discuss them and we disagree, it's not even that we might convince that person, it's that other people are listening and we all can get engaged and we can see what the merit or the virtues of their ideas are that are best. And we can cope with that. And the more that these hate speech, I was in Edinburgh and we were campaigning against the Hate Crime Act there, where now it's an act now, but it was the bill. The concern is you can say things in your own home and be arrested for it. So you can talk around a family table. And it was an astonishing protest, right? Because you had people that were nationalists, Scottish nationalists, you had people that were unionists, you had people of faith, you had secular people. Often people have very different ideas about almost everything. But they all came together. It was really inspiring around the thing that we need to be able to talk about these things. Whether you agree with this point on, it could be abortion, termination, or whatever your views are on pro-life, whatever. If we cannot discuss these things in the open, or we're going to get a knock on the door, then we go to a land like the Stasi, and we can't allow that to happen. I just, not to be too melodramatic, but I said to my mum in the garden when it was lockdowns, and it ruined everything for me, right? A lot of things. I lost a lot of money in business. I was doing film stuff and events and stuff in the States and here, and everyone lost livelihoods and, but I said to my mum, I'm not going to sit here and watch this country being turned into this thing. And I felt the same about being in New York as well and in the States, but it happened in New York, right? In New York originally, I was like, oh, great, they're not doing these vaccine passports. You could go in. And then suddenly they did these green passes. And I'm not going in anywhere to meet you. You have to meet me outside, right? Because I'm not doing that thing. But I think the thing is in Britain, and we showed this right, with Together. At the time, we were talking to people in Canada and Australia and others. We were always having conversations with everyone, right? We're linking up. And they're like, we don't think you can beat this mandate, but good luck, go for it. But like they were saying this, and you know what? When it happened and all these brave NHS workers, frontline workers, after they'd done it to care workers, we lost 45,000 of them, right? And they'd had this for a year, they hadn't taken a jab, and they were like, we're still working, we've been through you've been clapping us, what are you talking about? We don't want it, no. And and there was all the scorn and hate. But what happened was, and partly because they couldn't afford to lose so many people, and not, obviously there's a pragmatic, but that was something front and center. And we won that all together. Brave frontline workers, all of us. And you could see, right? And this is the point. We need to take our victories and remember them. And this is going to be the same with the farmers. It's the same with the discussion about net zero. Net zero, however much they're drilling down on it, it is not going to be happening. Certainly not in the way they think it's going to happen.
Did I read today they want to ban inhalers? Connor, look this up. Look up net zero and inhalers. See if you can find it. That's the one I read today. Like kids,
right.
Well, and adults as well, who like literally got
asthma inhalers.
Asthma inhalers. I'm pretty sure. You see it? I know sometimes I see stuff on Twitter and it might even be made up. But I mean, net zero is such a complicated one. I don't agree with net zero. But I'm not one of those people who believes that climate change is a hoax. I think there's something happening there.
But what do you think is happening?
I think we are seeing more adverse weather, and I'm pretty aware of challenges in part of the world with regards to farming because weather conditions are changing. My problem is I think it's hard to find the exact truth because I don't know who's in the background pulling strings to avoid us knowing what the real truth is. Is it a hoax or is it real? I'm pretty sure I'm on the side of it's real. I've spent some time with some climate scientists. I've done the interviews. I'm pretty sure something's happening there. Do I think it's as bad as they say? Potentially, but again, I don't know the impact. Honestly, it's so hard to get to the actual truth, but I'm pretty sure climate change is happening. What I'm also pretty sure of is us going to net zero will have zero impact ultimately, and therefore it's just catastrophic for our country. We're not going to make any. Put it this way: if climate is changing and the impact is catastrophic, the only way we prevent it is a coalition between China, America, and India agreeing that it's a problem. They do something. Otherwise, it's pointless. Because what are we? 0.5% of global emissions? We're not going to change things.
Exactly. I mean, I think the thing is that lots of things you could talk about there, and I'm certainly no expert, but from the Pleistocene period onwards, all sorts of raises and reductions in temperature have happened. There's a conversation about anthropocentric man-made conditions or not, or is it the sun and the relationship of the sea and all of those things alongside the things we're doing? But let's just take the idea that we are having an impact on it of some level. The question is, through innovation and technology and using our faculties, we've always been able to transform and develop and do things. There's been a really anti-humanist, anti-development, anti-technology impulse that's gone really big in the last few years, which is like, you shouldn't develop, you shouldn't do. And this is part of the thing that underpins all of this. It's like, we've gone too far. Even the oxymoron, sustainable development. You either have development or you sustain. You can't have the two together. You throw it all up. It's actually a contradiction in terms. The new things come about with new technology, like with nuclear, right? The idea that you could have something, and there are lots of things we haven't developed yet, lots of resources if we innovate and develop. But the obsession with limits, controls, restrictions, surveillance, no carbon footprint, which then we spend more on a carbon footprint to bring energy and elsewhere and other things here. And it's all contradictory and all flannel, a lot of it, right? Whether it's to do with EV cars or whether it's to do with your footprint. It's virtue signaling, saying words, lack of good faith. But actually, when you look at the impact and what you're actually doing, whether it's to do with furnaces and whether it's to do, you're not actually doing what you're saying you're doing. So you've got a series of things that are going on that are really problematic. I think I'm for a situation where we have as much scrutiny, as much scientific debate, as you can't have it without free speech, as much question asking, as much exploration. Research and development and innovation and engineering were parts of, if you think of Brunel, everything about Britain, historic, like bridge building, everything, right? Aeroplanes, Hackney Marshes. If you look at all the places where things were tried out, and not just, with the Wright brothers as well, the States and here, all those great innovations that were happening, we were a nation of that. We need to get back to that. We need to get back to making things, transforming things. I'm really inspired by what Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos and others are doing. Obviously, Branson's doing an element of it to the stratosphere and back with all of that. But we need much more of those things with James Dyson and the new ones, right? And we need to promote and propel it. And I think that the net zero thing is just absolutely wrong and is just damaging and harmful.
Well, who's making money off it?
Well, a lot of people are now making loads of money out of it, and everything from solar panels as well to planning consultants that are doing it for them with local authorities and a whole range of things, the impacts of farms. But if you have a situation where, on the one hand, the state should get out of the way of a lot of things. We should get rid of a lot of the kind of ideological, sclerotic, many-tiered levels that are in the way, all the EDI, ESG stuff. But some infrastructure would be handy. Building projects, that they do proper partnerships with private sphere, so you can have bonds and you can kind of get construction development. Why don't we have airports in the sea, and why don't we have tunneling and more innovation and universities everywhere, but also apprenticeships for people, and not everyone has to go to university and become this destination beacon, a bit like people think they are in Dubai or in Singapore or elsewhere. We're losing all that, right? People go there and they're like, this is the future. And if you speak to people in India, the young people, they're like, yeah, we're the future and we're going to solve the problems with the poorer people here. And we got it. And you're like, we need a bit more. They're not like, oh, whatever. So that attitude we need to have. But unfortunately, we've got an elite that, and we in our schools and our institutions, it's often no, look how terrible we are. We've been so bad and this. And you're like, do me a favor, right? We need to transform that. And I think the net zero approach is part of that problem. We need to have productivity, dynamic wealth creation for everyone. We will have challenges as they come along, but technology and innovation are ways to deal with them. Just on the kind of harms from weather and everything, there's a big discussion about how much more or less any of them have happened. But even if you put that to one side, there's a reason why in some places people get killed or property, versus property damage and all of that. Early warning systems, if you're on a silt plane in Bangladesh, and it's about development. If you have a more developed infrastructure and people have more wealth and you have the ability to come back and forth and you can preempt certain things, you can handle those things. But the whole narrative that we're just on this arc of destruction and Armageddon, and it's part, if you look at 40 years ago, 35 years ago, they were saying the big concern now is global cooling. Well, how does it happen? Some people are saying global cooling is a bigger problem. We're in the middle of a heating up part of a bigger cooling part. But then we saw Al Gore, every 5 minutes it was going to be, we're all about to be flooded and die and everything. And I just think we should calm down. We should take a breath, and we should reasonably and rationally, using scientific inquiry and investigation and an approach that's oriented towards development and innovation, go for transforming things in the spirit of doing things what's best for humans, right? Because now he's like, and within all of that, we care for things, right? We do care for nature, we care for the planet. We obviously are the only ones who set up sanctuaries and places and things like that when we did it, right? So we can do all of that. If you look at the States, some of the kind of national parks, it's incredible places. Yellowstone and others, by the way, it's one of my favorite shows, but Yellowstone and others. So I just think that, that's partly what the problem is. And together we kind of got a bit of a cabinet with different people, but the idea of a manifesto where the public's engaged and they want productivity, wealth creation for everyone. They make more profits, but people get paid more money. It's the problem with benefits in this country, right? Too many people are not working. It's not
3.8 million.
I think it's more like 5.
No, but they said the other day 3.8 million on long-term sick.
Yeah. It's terrible because also, if you're just looking at it, and like in the past, historically, working people very proud. They didn't want a handout. But now, if you're looking at a situation where you go out to work and you're going to get less money than doing that, that's not great. we've got to deal with it. We've got to pay more money to people. We've got to have companies that are not zombie companies that make money. We allow them to fail. We do retraining. We've got to wake up and get with the program.
Yeah, I was out in Africa at the start of the year. I was out in Kenya, Ghana, and Malawi. My son, my boy over there, he went out to Kenya for 3 months. And I'm not somebody who's anti-welfare. I think it's nice to live in a country that helps people when they hit rough times. I do. There's a welfare program in Ghana. Everyone works. If you've got mental health problems, you've still got to go out there and get work. You've got to earn food. Everyone out there is grafting and trying to make a change. And I'm not saying we need to turn our streets into what they have in Ghana, which is essentially everyone everywhere is just trying to make a buck. But at the same time, there's a lot of people could be working who aren't working. And so I think we need to strike a balance. Basically, we need to change the trajectory, because the problem is we can't fucking afford this. We're 2.2 trillion in debt. Right. Our deficit's going to be another 100 billion this year. All that's going to lead us to more borrowing. More borrowing leads to more inflation. We have to get out of this trajectory of that the solution is more government. Yeah. The only solution to me is less government. There's a really good article. Do you know Matt Goodwin?
Yeah, very well.
Right, really good article this week called Taking Back Our Country.
Yeah.
Talking about these exact things. So, but then it goes back to the politicians. We need the right people.
Yeah. Well, Matt Goodwin is one of those people that I think is definitely has the potential to be a great leader. He's already a good leader. He's very smart. He's making the right points. We've had him speak at an event. We work with different people like him and are looking to amplify and support as many people that are leading caliber potential to have an impact on things. The thing is, when the concession at the end of the Second World War in education, in the Butler Education Act, if you look at things like, we're often cited by some, but if you look at what happened with the National Health Service and other things, a lot of those things were concessions as a consequence of what had happened in the interwar period, the First World War, and the big debates in society. And this is what I call left and right. It wasn't you're evil. It's, do you subscribe to an idea that we should have collective ownership of things, right? Or do you believe more in a Hayekian, to take an extreme, like libertarian, we should have absolutely no state or whatever, or very limited, and the economy and how it's run, right? Or are you a little bit more like Keynes on it? Where are you? Like Adam Smith? They were the big debates. We're still fellow citizens. We organise them differently. That concession was meant to be a safety net, right? In health, in education. Like if you hit hard times, as you say, you can basically just get caught. So we don't just we're not the poorhouse. We haven't got these things that we had in Dickensian London and elsewhere, right? So in a civilized society, we have that. We have some breaks. People aren't just burning down in a match factory, right? The Bryant made match factory because they haven't got any breaks, and it's all in that situation where it's unsafe. We've got rules and regulations about how we do things. Now that's just gone mad. Some of the health and safety stuff, that are the risk-averse society, but also the situation with benefits, the situation with the state, and how dominated it is ideologically, how much in the public sector in Britain is running things. And this is the point about not, all our taxes and NI contributions, but also inheritance tax for everyone as it happens, not just the farmers. After you pay tax all the time in Britain, you all know, you travel, you've lived in different places, right? There's loads of young people leaving and going to places like Dubai and elsewhere, but it's or Portugal.
I just researched Portugal myself.
When 7 years now, it was 10 years, but no tax, but 7 years.
Well, when the rumor was that they were going to raise capital gains tax to 40%, I keep all my money in Bitcoin. I'm like, well, you're not having 40% of that. I'm off, fuckers. 24%, so I kind of stuck with it. But I'm totally with you. I mean, why stay?
Very important that you don't lose this, okay? This is your inheritance through Bitcoin.
Let Bitcoin rip. Don't rip up your Bitcoin. Set up inheritance with Casa.
So the point, just about the final bit about the safety net and all of that, is that there should be a safety net, but we've created a situation where there's too many incentives to be on benefit. And I never believed this argument historically in the past. And as you said, welfare scroungers and all that, because 35, 40 years ago when they were saying that, most people didn't want to do that, right? But we've now got an embedded kind of a bit of a cultural moment where on the one hand, the whole lockdown thing as well, work from home, the whole like, oh, no, there's a bit of an attitude as well, right? Decent hard work is important. It's a really good virtue. We should be proud of it. And you don't have to be a celebrity, right? You're great if you want to be a celebrity, but the people who make things, who deliver things, who go out, these are really important things, right? You go out and you have self-respect and dignity. Now, I think we could all make some more money, more profits, more pay. And that's going to mean dynamic destruction and creation of some businesses that collapse, transformation. Your expertise is in an arena where that's happening in money and finance and digital arena. But the more that we have that disruption, it's scary, right? Because but then new things come out of that. That's the point. Creative destruction. Allow the old to pass, transform it. We'd never have parliament or cities or canals or cars or any of that stuff if we had just rested on our laurels and didn't do it. And that's why it's essential that we are able to do that.
But then we need to have a culture of optimism, not pessimism.
Yeah.
Like, I'm an optimistic person, but also at the same time, I've got 4 or 5 businesses, right? I could open more. I'd like to. Where I live in Bedford, I'd love to open more businesses. But I look now, I just think, can't be fucked.
Yeah.
I swear. Like,
what kind of businesses are they?
I mean, I've got the podcast.
Yeah.
This is an easy business. Got the football club.
Yeah.
The tough business, like it.
That's a big business to have got into.
It's a different, you know why it's interesting as a business? It's the only one where you start the season, you go, we've got to get to break even. Right. Every year, the goal is break even. It's not to make we actually made a profit in the first 2 years, 3 years actually.
What's the capacity there?
Oh, tiny. I mean, we're step 4. I mean, it's what you can get around the pitch, which is about 1,800.
Right.
But, we're at that point where we need a new ground. But I've got the bar, which is a real local business.
Yeah.
I've got an events business.
Great.
And we're about to open a cafe for the football club.
Brilliant.
But I keep talking about the cafe on here because it's just a prime example.
Yeah.
If I was going to do one thing to revive towns, I would get rid of business rates for local companies.
Yeah.
Sorry, Starbucks, Costa, whatever. No, you can all pay business rates. But if you want to open a little cafe or a bookstore, get rid of business rates. It's a tax before we do any business.
Yeah.
It's a 20 grand tax before we do business. So we've got to face that. If we then manage to make a profit after giving 12.08% increase on wages for holidays for all staff, which we have to do, staff we'll never be able to get rid of under the new employment laws. If we manage to somehow make a profit and then got to pay corporation tax, after that I might have a dividend for myself, and if I leave that dividend to my son, he's going to pay 40% inheritance tax. And I look at it all, so I'm going to do the cafe because it's for the football club, but we talked about opening a pizza place or a burger place or an arcade for kids. And I'm like, I can't be fucked.
Yeah.
It's too much work for making too little money. But if I was in charge, business rates would be gone.
Yeah.
Can we provide in schooling a way to inspire kids to be entrepreneurs and then give them the means to do it? I've always set up businesses. Doing it now is hard.
Yeah.
But how do we get the next range of...
It's a really important question. I mean, one thing there are some other things. I mean, obviously, there's a question of social enterprise.
Yeah.
It could be a way. I was wondering, because obviously some of the shops, like the hospice shops and all that in retail, they'd have a different thing with business rates and all that. So if you're a charity, and it might be that as a foundation, you could do stuff for low kids in football and all that kind of thing. But you got to jump through loads of hoops. You got to think, and that's the point. And there's disincentives to doing it. And this partly the hospitality thing as well. I mean, like retail's become really tough and challenging with all the licensing laws, the fact they don't allow you to open later, and then all these impositions, and you got to jump through this. It's like very difficult, even when you have a full venue all the time, and like the security measures, all the stuff you have to do. And it's challenging, and we need to create an arena where there are incentives to do these things and to fail. Like in America, they see it as part of a success. You learn things. And I've lost business. My first, I said when we came in here, so we walked around where your studio is. I love Soho so much. I'm also sad about some of the things that have happened here. But I had my first office my second office actually, but in Denmark Street and Tin Pan Alley. And we did the first Ibiza reunion tours with DJ Magazine. We did stuff around the UK and all of that, and it was really great. But I lost that company because what happened was it was running it all on our own cash, just on revenue, and I went down and I had to go through the humiliating thing of paying their rent, giving them over some stuff. And then I remember the guy there, and he was telling me at the time, those were Pink Floyd, all these guys have been here. And I was like, this is it. I've blown my whole career. But I made sure everyone got paid. And actually, it set me up for the future, right? And we were in between acid jazz. Funny enough, the people in the office opposite us, I used to see them and I goes, what is it you do here? They go, we've got this tiny little magazine. You won't know about us. It's the art world. We're called Freeze. I'm like, oh. After that, I then got Amanda and Freeze to launch their first event ever at the Truman Brewery, which we then went into, having had the experience of losing a company and knowing what that meant and how we could streamline small new entrepreneurs to come in, low cost, get them set up, peppercorn rent, get them started, get a kind of mixture and then attract bigger fish with higher rent all around some hubs. I couldn't have learned and understood all of that had I not gone through that experience myself, right? So these are the things we have to kind of encourage, even though it's, you sit there thinking, God, this is the end of the world. I've just lost everything. I'm going to do it. And I lost my girlfriend, my business, the whole thing. I'm like, it's a disaster. But it makes you, it shapes you. And with that kind of culture where we kind of experiment and explore, we get rid of this risk averse stuff. You don't just be stupid. You have to think it through, get a plan, right? Execute. But even if you get those things wrong, it's worth the lesson because you can come through that and then it will forge your understanding and knowledge. And people take you much more seriously, right? Particularly if you come through and you act properly, right? And even when with the Vibe Bar, when we finished up and all of that, and people were upset and the whole area, and Tower Hamlets were humiliated because they shouldn't have done it, right? And the whole area changed when we left. But we did it in a way that, we contributed so much and I learned, and I couldn't really have done the Nighttime Industry Association without that. And we could not have done together, having not been through all of that. And all of these things have led us to where we get to. Now we do events with Together that have the benefit of all the experience with events, hospitality, executing stuff, bringing people together. This is going to happen more with the farmers. You're going to see some more of this. There's big stuff being planned.
Gareth Wynne-Jones in here the other day.
Yeah, brilliant. I saw. Yeah, great.
Yeah.
You would love Gareth. So they've just been yesterday. There's that in Wales was going on, and today Scotland, as you say. But there's a whole raft of things that are coming down the line, and a lot of people talking together, working together, a bit like we saw with the truckers in Canada. But this, we've seen it in Europe. We've seen the BBB in the Netherlands. Just a new political party coming out of what was going on with farmers. The whole kind of impositions. The government is doing disdainful again, contemptuous. Gosh, these guys don't look at the news, do they? You just think these guys aren't watching what's going on. Are you watching what's going on? It's like they're in this mad echo chamber and they just keep doing the same thing. And you're on repeat. That insanity thing. You keep doing this. Are you having a look around you? What's going on? They are not. And I think that this is really, really exciting times. It's daunting. It's a bit nerve-wracking because when you see them using contempt laws, when we see things like blasphemy laws being discussed and the Prime Minister can't even articulate why we won't have blasphemy laws here, you think, we've got problems. But that's why it's making space for exceptional new people coming through. And we've seen it all. There's people like Us for Them, the women, the parents that did that for kids. There's Free Speech Union. There's Don't Divide Us. There's Academy of Ideas. There's, we work with all sorts of people across the board. Lots of great people in farming that are doing really good stuff all around the country. I think we should, mention people. There's people... like Tarquin has been talking to lots of people. Like
Tarquin's great.
Yeah, the effing farmer. Obviously, no farmers, no food. The guys that have been doing, like Jeffrey Gibson, that are doing the stuff yesterday, and Matt and others that have really put this whole thing, given a lead to things locally, regionally, nationally. People like Clive and all the guys, Ollie and all those guys that are doing stuff in London, but across the board. And this is not one of the things when we launched the Nighttime Industry Association. There are other hospitality organizations, right? And they were not happy about us launching. But I'm like, we're the street fighters. We're the guys that come down from the hills. We're going to talk to the police about drugs because you're not doing it. You're talking about sugar taxes. Cool, fine. But we're getting all our heads chopped off, all the nightclubs. We're like the dirty cousins, right? That you don't really want to talk about. And the bars. But what happened was they saw that when we came out, we were able to really transform the landscape. And we did that with the NTIA. And I think we're going to see more of that happening with farming and with other things. And it's exciting because I think we started off talking about the Labour Party and the Tory Party and all that. There's new things happening. They were like 19th century, 20th century. We've got all these things. If you're a Red Wall voter now, who've always voted Labour, you're like looking at this going, what's going on? I mean, called all these names. Or also, if you were always conservative, but if you have conservative values, you probably aren't sticking around that much longer in the Conservative Party, right? Because they're not really conservative. Nope. So you've got these new things being thrown up, full of potential. exciting, but it's going to be up to us as well to have some sense of ourselves and get involved. We encourage everyone to get involved with Together, to be local, regional, national, become a leader, get involved with us, do whatever you can at whatever level you can. We've got calls to action all week been going out about assisted dying bill, about farmers, tell your MP, organising local events. We do around the country, we do constant events, right? In all the different regions and all that, engaging with people, been campaigning, protest, lobbying. We have a 360 approach. So we do some press, some lobbying, but our main strength, our magic power is having boots on the ground and have people that are active and doing things. And that's why we're saying the way you keep people honest is that you have a relationship with the public. And and actually Rupert Lowe did something very interesting with the assisted dying bill, because we were outside Parliament yesterday talking to him and Baroness Fox and a number of others, Labour MPs and DUP and others. But Rupert put it out. He
went to his constituents, didn't he?
Yeah, he put it out. So he said a mini referendum. Now, I will say that even when you do it, it was the best thing in the context of this, in some ways, really represented something good. However, the problem is the whole debate and discussion has been a bit one-sided. Like if you say to people, would you not like to suffer? And this is a way to doing it, you're going to get a certain answer like the Sunday Times poll. And what we're saying it Together is we need much longer to thrash out the implications of something like this when it becomes on the legislature, you're legal, that certain things. So what's it mean about the idea of burden for old people? What about the net zero discussion? Too many people in the world. The whole idea
it feels like it came out of nowhere all of a sudden.
Well, a bit like inheritance tax on the farmers and a bit like the pensioners thing, all these things.
Well, so I don't, maybe I get this wrong. Kind of have a look for this, maybe. But I know they're ahead of us on this in Canada. And I'm pretty sure I read one story about like someone had chronic depression and wanted to use assisted dying, which to me terrifies me. Can you have a look for that? So you can find that kind of.
It is true.
Is that true? Yeah. And so it seems to have come out of nowhere. And suddenly I saw these adverts on the underground of people playing guitars and being happy and saying like, "Let me die" and shit.
Dancing in their pajamas. Yay!
It's fucking creepy. But it's the thing I've struggled with. We lost my mum to cancer about 7-8 years ago.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's rough watching someone die for cancer.
Terrible.
Her palliative care was great, and to be honest,
good?
her really bad bit wasn't too long, and she wasn't in a lot of pain. But I can imagine a scenario where my mum is in a lot of pain, excruciating pain, day after day, and you're like, well, why would you put somebody through that? But the idea of giving the state, who I don't trust for fucking shit, the idea of giving them the green light to medically be able to terminate people's lives terrifies the hell out of me.
Yeah.
Because where does it lead to?
Exactly. Well, look, the thing is, there's lots of things to talk about it. And at togetherdeclaration.org, we've actually got a bit of a page dedicated to assisted dying bill where we point out a number of things that are a concern. If people keep citing Oregon, but obviously there's
what is that? I don't know.
Well, the Oregon's one of the places where they're saying the legislation is more like the 38-page bill that they brought out within a month to get put through, and it's in its second reading now. It's not enough time. We've had just under a month. The vote's going to be Friday, right? So they're saying it's more like Oregon than it is like Canada or the Netherlands or Switzerland, and it's less likely to have creep. But it's not true, because there has been creep in Oregon. There have been more people coming from other areas to go there and that type of thing. But we've already seen, as you say, the discussion about should depression become part of it. And these days, depression, it's like hate speech. Everyone's depressed, apparently, right? Obviously, we used to have melancholy or used to have ups and downs, but now they say you've got a condition. It's the therapeutic culture where we're all vulnerable and at risk, and we've all got mental conditions. At schools in America, 50% of the kids are on Ritalin and at summer camps being given out things because the collapse of authority and the sense that, everyone's vulnerable and at risk, and the end of the idea of resilience and robust approach. And that's true for adults as well. So we've got this moment, you're just feeling a bit blue and bit bad, bit down, or if you're feeling terrible, you just go and top yourself and you're encouraged. This bill has doctors being able to say to you, have you thought about this? Now, I can tell you, right, my dad had MND. It's like any illness, when you see people with cancer, terrible pain, it's terrible. Motor neuron disease, Lou Gehrig's in America, terrible, terrible condition. And, my mum's got a condition And my dad died 20 years ago. But what I'm saying is that at what point you might think to yourself, if I had this thing, then I'd never want to do this at this point. And then you get to that point and you're like, oh, but this is like Tuesdays with Maury. The moment of this day with just the people that I love or looking through the window is so remarkable. It's so transcendent, so sublime that I actually didn't think I'd be loving it, but I am. Or is there a diving bell and butterfly moment where you're winking, that's all you can do? But it's an incredible story you're telling and you'll have a connection with a human being. What I'm saying is that there's a range of things. 6 months, they say. How do they know if you're going to die in 6 months? My good pal, they said to his mate, she's going to go. That was 18 months ago. We don't know if it's 6 months or on the dot within 6 months. We've had all sorts of conversations. You don't take a lot to think about a bean counter in the NHS going, well, we got these beds. We need them cleared, chaps. Come on. We've seen through lockdowns, the whole do not resuscitate, don't let your family in, putting on the Liverpool care pathway, which was meant to be jettisoned in 2014, but has been continued with. The idea, the end of life protocols where people, you had everything from midazolam to all sorts of things being implemented without the family knowing. Now, we just had a debate about this, togetherdeclaration.org. People can have a look at it. But, Steve James, the doctor who challenged Sajid Javid, right, about the jabs and everything. So he's a great guy. But he's like, well, at King's, it hasn't quite been like that. And this is how we do the DNAR. So these are important discussions. Like, look, Peter, I'm not being flippant about this, right? Because I think privately, we can all make different decisions. Like there's hospices, there is already, the point about all of this is there are informal things that go on and that not just palliative care, but that you have discussions. When you legislate something, and as you say, the state puts something into law, everything from am I in the way and a burden, proud people who are then older, they're not working anymore, they might feel that they're in the way, they're just, whether it's the environment or whether they're family or there's just a bit much. And do we want a civilization where we're thinking about our old, are the people that we venerate that have brought us up and done that? Do we want that? And a range of things. And you say, well, they've got to be able to take it themselves. Well, there's all sorts of issues with that as well, right? What if they can't and they want to? I'm saying that they've got different things they do in different places, like straws or not. But if you can't do that, and what does life mean? And should you take an oath to uphold it and maintain it? And we all know that I've just been through something with my aunt, and it was terrible, right, at the end. And but I think these things are not about bringing in a new death penalty, which in a way some of this could be. Now, I'm saying that these are very emotive discussions, and I don't listen to what I would call maybe the other side to me, and I'm not flippant about it, right? I think they're well-intentioned and in good faith, and I can understand the points in all of these arguments, right? But what we're saying it together is we need to be able to thrash these out more and consider them and not have it brushed through in 30 days. We're just in Parliament, they just say, and she says, we'll just vote for it anyway, even if you're not quite sure. Well, hold on. And to his credit, Wes Streeting has come out and said things, and Keir's upset about that, and others have. And what's interesting is that, they're not being whipped particularly. I think there was a bit going on, but it's a free vote. And so I think we need to be able to discuss all these, but the public, we call for a referendum on this. Post this, we're saying, say no now, tell your MPs no now. But if you want to really do this, have a national referendum, but let's thrash it out. We make this point with everything. If you have an area, and we talk about low traffic neighbourhoods, and you talk to proper consultation where you say, these are the things we want to do, these are the positive things we think we can get from, these are the negative ones, let's weigh them all up. Now, when you've considered all of those things and everyone's discussed it, what would you like to do? And the majority, we say, right, that's democracy. If people want that, I personally don't like the idea that we have little hamlets, tolling booths, and every time you go somewhere, you're surveying. But that's just but it's tough. It's a democracy, right? I haven't liked lots of things in a democracy. But we don't think that's what's going to happen. The problem is that it's presented in a certain way. You got nudge, fear. And I just want to remind everyone as well, right? Not that we should need reminding, but there are obviously a lot more people are going to watch your show than necessarily a fraternity knows this already. But in the last few years, it's become very, very clear how much manipulation and propaganda and nudge and the idea that you just put certain things out and spin and you present things to the public in a certain way. And we need much more discussion and debate. And that's really our point on this.
Well, that's why I don't like suddenly posters on the underground. Advertise it. It's fucking propaganda. Did you find that thing, Con?
What was
The
it? exactly?
depression. So I think with somebody in Canada,
So in Canada, yes, but
assisted dying,
it was
depression?
only 400 last year.
400 assisted dying or 400 assisted dying with depression.
So in total, it was 13,000,
13,000 assisted dying.
of which 400 were for mental illness after they had tried every other treatment possible.
I mean,
and
that
came
fucking.
to that decision.
Can you put that up? Have you got a
13,000 was 4.1% of deaths total in Canada.
4.1% of deaths was
Done
assisted
by,
dying?
yeah.
Have you got? Well, can you bring it up at all?
Yeah.
Yeah, let me have a look at this. Here we go. Right, just scroll up to the top. Let me just see it. Right, here we go. Canada's assisted dying laws and spotlight is expansion. Pause, dickhead. They want to expand.
Yeah.
When Canada's Justice Minister announced plans to legalise medically assisted dying a decade ago, just scroll down a bit, Con. She acknowledged the proposal might prove divisive, blah, blah, blah. I'll keep going. Where are the stats? Okay, government figures show that 13,102 people ended their lives under MAID in an increase of 30% on the previous year. Keep going. Where's the depression ones? It must be lower.
So
Here we go. Only four. Of the 13,100 people, 6.5% had terminal illnesses or faced imminent death. I love the fact it says only. This is typical Guardian shit. Only 463 people suffering from a chronic condition access MAID. Chronic medical conditions at the time. Here we go. The chair of mental illness, the idea of 400 of them and 40 million have reached a point where they've exhausted all treatment. See, look, I know people have some horrific mental health. It is a fucking tragedy. I've had cocaine addiction at one point, and when I came off it, I was in a terrible way. Panic attacks, anxiety. I couldn't function. I spent a year running, doing yoga and meditating, and got rid of it. It
Well
went.
done.
Yeah. And it was only because I went to the doctors and they wanted to put me on beta blockers, then they wanted to put me on antidepressants. And I sat in my car, I was like, fuck this, what can I do? I gave up work and I went and bought a pair of trainers. I ran every day pretty much for a year, just run. And it went. And I'm not saying all of those can be, some people just, we know. But how many of those 400 could have been caught? How do we really know they've exhausted everything? I don't like assisted suicide for mental health. It freaks me the fuck out.
Well, it's for all sorts of things. And what you've got is, so in the bill, it proposes that you have two doctors and a judge, but the second doctor you can keep appealing and changing. A bit like ambulance chasers and insurance, you can quite envisage a situation where you have a whole industry organised around that, and it becomes more things become incorporated into the discussion. And already people have floated the idea that depression should be part of it here. The mental health question, they're saying it's off the cards at the moment, but considering it's so significant and profound and everyone's about it, then you can see what can happen with it. And we should remember, right, that obviously it's illegal, but people can do suicide already. I mean, the irony of doing it on the underground is people do go there and commit suicide. Terrible thing. Sadiq Khan wanted to intervene about body issues with some posters, but not this issue. I think the kickback against some of this has been significant. Again, this is one of those things that is really, it's a public thing, but there's also private things, and it's really emotive. And, I've got friends who watched our debate and they're like, you know what? Every time someone spoke, I agreed with that thing they said, and I was going backwards and forwards on the issue, right? And I think it's one of those things. I just think that it's far too soon with this thing, and it should be no for now. And we have real concerns about all the consequences. There's terrible conversations like you're not just a bed blocker at NHS, but you're a coffin dodger, and the generation wars. And if we don't have to look back that far. I know a lot of people want to put it out their mind, understandably, but what happened in care homes when there were meant to be a ring of steel and everything, but families not getting to see those people, and then how they were treated, how people often are treated in care. This is partly the issue as well. There's a big argument about palliative care and about care homes. All of that should be improved. But the idea that we just sanction the state does this in 28 days with a 38-page, where most of the MPs haven't even considered it at length, and certainly the public hasn't. we need to say no to that and have it properly debated out. And if it's such a good idea and it's so great, then let's flesh it out. And this is the point about so many things that are so fundamental. We need much more scrutiny, debate, discussion. People need to be held accountable, and not just spin it and nudge it and just go, yeah, just crack on, just vote. Yeah, don't worry. It's insulting.
Yeah. Connor, can you also just look who runs the assisted dying? Is it a private company? Because it's Switzerland's is Dignitas, isn't it? That is a private company. And I think you hit the nail on the head. You kind of hinted at, where does this become professional? People make money from it. Because we've seen this out in the US with the trans issues. Kids feeling like they're in the wrong body, gender dysphoria. They're going to certain private medical institutions. They're being they're having the option of medical treatment to transition, but somebody's making money off that.
Yeah.
Now, sometimes you've got to follow the money. If there's an incentive for someone to make money, they might introduce things. I'm a capitalist. My goal is to have more downloads and better sponsors, yada yada. My football club is more people coming through the doors buying burgers. If you are a private company, fuck you. Well, they shouldn't let you be in the stock market. If you're a private company and your money's made of people killing themselves, you have to find people who want to kill themselves.
Oh, totally.
So does that mean you start advertising? Do you advertise on the TV half-time during Liverpool-Real Madrid? Yeah.
I think we got a bit of a problem like that in America with prisons as it happens.
Oh, definitely.
And the whole kind of militarized nature of the police force in some places. I know there's been other discussions as well, but I think that's a problem. And that's a problem undoubtedly when you do that. I think that the mixture of all these things together is a problem. A sense of a burden, sometimes you've got kids that might like to see their parents go. Sometimes, my mum's point would be, well, sometimes kids won't let their parents die. But all these things going on, and you can just to say you can have a living will, and it can be with you can post it with the public guardian, and that's important. People should do that. We've all had kind of discussions in our family about what can happen, and people should articulate those things. But this is such a profound question, life and death, and what we do and how we do it. And in light of the last 5 years in particular, I did a play about this in New York 15 years ago called The Euthanist, and we had a big salon discussing it and all that at the time. And it's when Dr. Kevorkian was doing this whole thing with his death machine. But at the time, people were like, oh, it's a bit overly dramatic. It was still a serious discussion. But, the idea that we just have a killing machine of people. But then the last few years, if I'd have said to you, Peter, 6-7 years ago, we're going to have these lockdowns, it's like some dystopian sci-fi. Yeah, I used to pitch film and TV ideas, right? People are like, that's too mad. Don't be silly. Come back with a better idea. And yet here we are, right? And we've been through all of that. So I think you should give pause in the same way the conversation is about free speech, where you start pointing at what could happen, right? And then you saw the Online Safety Act and others. And then you start seeing that people are going to prison and getting knocks at the door for saying things. Not for having houses burgled, not for assaults, not for thick bikes being stolen, not for phones being... No, don't even bother us with all that often, but for saying things or posting things. So we should take note and make sure that, I think everyone, should make sure that their voices are heard on this.
All right, this is in Canada. Only doctors and nurse practitioners can administer MAID. And if you are receiving care from PHSA and wish to explore MAID, your healthcare provider can connect you with a healthcare professional from your local... Yeah, and I'm pretty sure in Canada, the entire industry is social health. I don't think there is, I think they banned private healthcare in Canada.
But also the thing is, there is a tendency around people who make money to want to make more money. But I think it's a combination of all the factors combined together. And anyone who's been involved in some of these things will know already that some of these things happen with families already at a certain point, but it's informally. The other thing that's problematic is there's all sorts of issues about if it falls outside the 6 months, but there's also the thing that we're not really addressing with all this, and they don't seem to want to discuss, is we've got a whole range of things going on that people are not agreeing to that are happening now in the NHS. Stuff that's happening, people being accelerated, taking off food, do not resuscitate, the end of life, what they call the Liverpool care pathway.
I've not heard this Liverpool care pathway.
Yeah, well, it was stopped in 2014, but the whole idea of how you end the life with someone, and it was proven to be really problematic and shouldn't be happening, but it's still demonstrably happening in places. So we've got this debate going on to formalize it, and there's real grave issues already with what's going on already. And but also it's parodied the discussion sometimes. The idea that they just like people are just constantly allowed just to suffer and all of that. And I just think that we've got a lot of grave issues, and you know, we can obviously move on to the next thing, but that's why we've called for this to have more scrutiny, more discussion. And the main thing is so we can thrash out these ideas and people can all get a chance to reflect on them a bit more.
But that, I mean, essentially that's what we need everywhere.
Exactly.
You know, it's what we need everywhere because it certainly feels like a managed decline. How much time have you spent looking at the money? Because I'm not everything, but I put a lot of the root problems that we're going through here as a country, that America's been going through, is the money, the financial system. We have a system that allows private equity to create zombie companies and just essentially to take all the profits out of it and create, like we've seen it with the water industry. All those companies are massively in debt. Government's massively in debt. We've got this eternal money printer. This is why I got into Bitcoin, because I'm just so sick of watching. Well, no, that's not true. I should say it correctly. I got into Bitcoin because I wanted to get my mum cannabis oil to treat her.
Right.
Can't buy online, went online, needed Bitcoin to do it, started trading, fucked around, made a bit of money, lost money. Then I learned about Bitcoin. I learned about the money printer. I learned about the expansion of the money supply, why that leads to inflation, all those things. And I was like, oh, I can keep my money in Bitcoin and the government can't steal it and it's not going to be debased. That's why I got into it. But it sent me down this rabbit hole of looking at the issue of debt and how much debt we've got and the eternal money printer. We don't ever run a surplus anymore. I don't know if you remember. I remember as a kid, my dad used to have like an account with a building society and a bank, and they would get interest rates of 5%, 6%, 7%. They could save for the future. You can't fucking save anymore. Here we go. Oh, is this the UK debt clock? Oh, what's that up to? Go up 2.7 trillion. Okay. The debt to GDP ratio. So that's high, 125%. Tell you this, of the 52 countries that have gone over 135% debt to GDP ratio, only one of them hasn't had a currency default. That was Japan, which has had stagflation. Thank you, Lynn Alden, for that. Scroll up a touch, Con. Interest payments for a second. We pay more on debt interest a year than we spend on education.
Yeah, it's nuts.
Yeah, and this is the rabbit hole that I've been down. And this is the thing. This is the thing that excites me most of all those things in America. There's two parts to it. It's this DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency. It's getting government to a point where it isn't just a parasite. And also they're talking about a Bitcoin strategic reserve. That's the rabbit hole I've been down.
At Ledden, we've built the best Bitcoin-backed loan platform in the world. Proven, trusted, growing. Ledden's proven track record speaks for itself. Visit ledden.io/Mr. Obnoxious to get started. Ledden, there is no second best. Ledden is not regulated in the United Kingdom. Any credit products or virtual asset services provided by Ledden are not subject to UK regulatory protections. Please consider the risks associated with virtual assets and consult a financial advisor before making any decisions.
Fantastic. Well, there's a lot to be said about that, obviously, you know, macroeconomics and microeconomics, the gold standard, historically, what it meant, fiduciary kind of diligence, but financial monetary policy. We talked before about whether you're a Labour or conservative or left or right, the whole idea of monetarism versus other economic schools of thought. But ostensibly, the idea that you would build and make things and transform things. And you can still have a service sector, but you build things, you have productive dynamism. The problem with the ever-increasing debt, and when you unhinge it previously to gold, and then you just basically just do lots of quantitative easing, and you're not under any like kind of scrutiny or control, is that, like we saw with 2008, you could be too big to fail. Everyone's got to bail that out. It doesn't really get addressed. And subsequently, we've seen more of that, like the money tree, right? Just printing. And you know, being able to, so some people have got big concerns that this is part of a plan, right? I tend to think that what's happened is that we've got a multitude of things that have all been happening, right? You have a situation where you have the Industrial Revolution. Some nation states are more wealthy and dynamic. Some prosper more and continue and grow, and then others emerge and develop. And there's uneven development, right? So you've got different nation states and different regions. And also, when the ones that have developed to begin with, they have a bit of a kind of beneficial relationship to the ones that don't, both from extracting resources and repayments and structures and all of that. But we've definitely got a situation where And I'd love to find out more from you. I'm always interested to think, well, where, because the conversation about not just Bitcoin, but Ethereum and all the others. And
fuck all the others. They're all shit.
Interesting. But also blockchain. I know a lot of guys in the States are saying there's stuff around the technology around
all
this.
Bollocks.
Okay. So if you were to put some money in 12 months ago into Bitcoin, what would that have meant? That like a tenner?
Depends what the price of it is at the time. But I don't tend to think of it like that.
Not a year, not 5 years. Is it long term?
Yes. So what's happening with Bitcoin is we are repricing the world in a new currency. And what we've gone is, let's start with, can you get that website up? What the fuck happened in 1971? It's a great website. I know the guy did it. And that's essentially when the US came off the gold standard, right? Yeah. And it shows you all these interesting graphs of things that changed. But it's all about incentives. So here you go. I love this first one. It covers productivity and compensation, right? Yeah. Up until 1971, both lines pretty much got the same, right? Yeah. Come off the gold standard, productivity is up 246%. But compensation's only up 115%. And you go down this website, if you just scroll down, Colin, and just show, look, there's just all these examples of different things which changed. The truth is, when you have constrained money, you have to think rationally. When you have unconstrained money, you don't have to. So if you're in government, really, what should be happening in the next election is everyone should be saying we have to drastically cut government's budget by 20%.
Yeah,
start paying off this debt. Well, where are you going to take it from? Well, we can get half of that from the NHS. Oh, we can't get rid of the NHS. All right, we can get half rid of social welfare. Oh, we can't get rid of social welfare. Well, what about pensions? No, the truth is, like you or I, if you don't pay your bills at the end of the month, you'll get a knock at the door because you can't pay your mortgage and you'll lose your house. With government, when they get a knock at the door, they just print more money. Yeah. They just create more money. And so what that does is, I think was it Hayek who said, inflation is purely a monetary phenomenon. You keep putting more money in, you're going to get inflation, right? And so, but the inflation isn't even, right? The distribution, the Cantinian effect means the money goes those nearest the spigot. That's just the way it works. And so for me, when I look at it, I think there's a difference. My pounds in my bank account will buy 10% less stuff in a year, right? Yeah. So I don't keep pounds in my bank account. I spend it or get rid of it. This guy, Jeff Booth, actually wrote a great book called The Price of Tomorrow. He said, when the money isn't scarce, everything else is. So everything becomes an asset. Houses, artwork, whatever. That's why my son can't afford a house, because they've become the assets. But the thing about Bitcoin is that it flips the incentives. Because there's a fixed limit, there's only 21 million. The Bitcoin I have there, I don't want to spend it, because it's going to be worth more in 4 years' time. So I'm like, I only spend on things I really want, like really important things. So it just changes all the incentives.
Well, I get that, but you use a very interesting example. So let's just address that for a second. Yeah. Housing, which is a massive question and concern. The reason why your son might not be able to afford it right now is numerous reasons, right? One is that we've had a NIMBYist approach to building on the green belt and outside. Two is that we need 10 million new houses in Britain at least, and we haven't done that. Forget the borders and migration question, just about young people. We need to build proper houses. Yeah. We haven't done that. That creates jobs for people. It also lowers the price. But because successive governments have said, invest in your home and that will be your pension, and then you take it and basically pay for your care when you go and have a second home, and that's the only investment, because we don't have productive, dynamic business, manufacturing, secondary, tertiary sectors. Everyone's done that. And what should be a place just to live in has become an investment with bricks and mortar. And that's a problem, right? So if you have a situation, and no one wants to lose their political situation and saying we're now going to make your £1 or £3 million house become 300 grand, right? Which is what it really should be. So we've got all of these multitude impacts. Definitely the issue of printing money ongoing is an issue, but I think there's a number of these different things that all intertwine and interlock.
Consider Bitcoin as a savings technology. That's the best way to do it. Yeah. It is a savings technology, but long-term saving. I consider long-term, I want to retire, right? Yeah. So I want money that's going to appreciate in value. Bitcoin's volatile because it's new. It's a decentralized money. It's nothing we've ever had before. And its distribution is volatile. But it goes through these 4-year cycles. But for me, it's a savings technology. I put the money in there that I know I'm not going to spend for the next 4 or 5 years, maybe 10 years, and I know it's going to appreciate in value. And so the way I always try to say to people, someone will come to me and say, oh, it's too late. They see it today, 75 fucking grand. They're like, I heard about it was 20 grand. I heard about it's a grand. They think they're too late. I say, I'm not selling mine.
Yeah.
This number goes up forever. As long as government are expanding the money supply, their Bitcoin price will go up forever. And so I'll buy it at 75 grand. I'll buy it 150 grand. I'll buy when it's $1 million. I'll constantly buy Bitcoin when governments continue to increase money supply.
Just hold on to it.
Yeah, but I do various things. Like there was a time, like 2 years ago, we wanted to move house, found a house we loved. I sold some Bitcoin at a low price. It was like $27,500. I always keep it in dollars. $27,500. What is it in dollars at the moment, Connor? About 199, 98?
97.
97. Okay. So I've missed out on tripling my gains there. But I found a lovely house for us to live in, and it's beautiful. I also give it away. You know, people I know are setting up businesses, Bitcoin businesses. I give bits away. Okay. So for me, I just think of it, it's just savings. It is where I save my money. So every 4 years I get a boost.
Got it. So what's the deal with it's a bit like, yeah. What's the deal with like the Fed, for instance, when they've been trying to lock down and go for people? And we know some really high profile examples where they find them and they've done things. What do you think the medium term, because obviously the idea of a sovereign nation state, particularly one that dominates internationally the markets and they can bring their army and their police to how do you see all of this in that context and the FDA and all that?
So in relation to the Fed, I mean, personally, I think central banks are a cancer and they should go. I think you need, I prefer, and I don't know a lot about it, but everything I read on the era of free banking, I preferred that. In that, you took risk with banks, not that they were eternally bailed out whenever there's an issue. Therefore, you distribute your money into different places. I think central banks and a few guys, it's a bit like you said earlier, they don't think of the consequences. I don't think they can know the consequences. Fucking around with interest rates. Interest rates should be determined by the free market. But what I think Trump winning power over Kamala has fundamentally changed the trajectory of this, because under the Biden administration, certainly with Elizabeth Warren and her goons, they were attacking Bitcoin all the time, lying about it, going after the on-ramps, the off-ramps, saying you couldn't self-custody it. They just wanted full control over you. Trump's the opposite. I actually think Trump's come to this revelation that the best way the US can deal with their debt is through Bitcoin. They're talking about a Bitcoin strategic reserve. They're talking about accumulating up to 1 million Bitcoin.
I've seen that.
And I think that is a scenario where they can start offsetting that against their debt. It's like having a gold reserve, and we don't have it here. So the only trajectory for this, for me, is up and to the right. And it's just the speed at which it happens. It could be 300 grand next year. It could be 1 million in 5 years. Yeah. But it's going to continue to grow and grow. Because also, it's a bit like the media, right? All the mainstream corporate media controlled narratives, controlled distribution of information. And so we didn't really have anything else apart from what we chatted about with our mates in the pubs. Then we got social media and people started saying, well, that's bullshit, and having different conversations. Then we got podcasters who can essentially compete with the mainstream media with 2 people in a row. This is 3 people run this podcast. 10 million people could listen to this one day, hopefully. But, but we can... The decentralization of technology and the internet has now enabled us to compete with those centralized forces. Bitcoin's the same. The decentralization of money has allowed this money to compete with sovereign money.
I think what would be good is a lot of people don't understand it. So the more people can understand it and engage with it, and consumers and all that, would be a really good thing. I will say one thing about it all is that not having understood it entirely, like a lot of things I don't understand, we've done a lot of campaigns with the Bank of England around, firstly, cash, and we've got consultations. There's another one going on at the moment, and everyone should look at our site to see about it, because we should keep cash, about keeping cash machines, aimed at keeping banks, but also about not being debanked because of your political views, with the FCA and others, that we were really successful with the Free Speech Union, Us for Them and others, in getting that to become legislation. And then it just, because the election was called so quickly, it never got ratified. So the debanking thing can still happen, which famously Nigel Farage, it happened to him, but it happened to many of us, and PayPal and others. And by the way, also Andrew Bailey, the Bank of England, never got held accountable for what happened. Everyone blamed Liz Truss, but actually the Bank of England, not only in terms of interfering in the wrong things and not doing the things it should do properly, has been really helped trigger some of those issues that we saw with the Truss, in the moment of Liz Truss. So I think obviously the questions that you're talking about are really essential. I think the thing is that you're where you really struck the nerve is that politicians have become so lazy and so bad at economics that the idea is they've got a problem, they'll just keep printing money.
That's why I put all mine in Bitcoin. Kind of bring up the tweet I put about banking. I put up one about banking this morning.
Okay.
Did you see? So Mark Andreessen was just on Rogan. He talked about how tech founders were targeted.
Mm-hmm.
This is really interesting. So, if you just go to, you got my Twitter? Right, so play that video, pause it now, get the sound on. I don't know how long it is, 1:42. Can you just rewind it a touch?
Yeah.
This started about 15 years ago with this thing called Operation Choke Point, where they decided to, as marijuana started to become legal, as prostitution started to become legal, and then guns, which there's always a fight about. Under the Obama administration, they started to debank legal marijuana businesses, escort businesses, and then gun shops, just like your gun manufacturers, and just like you're done, you're out of the banking system. And so if you're running a medical marijuana dispensary in 2012, like you, guess what? You're doing your business all in cash because you literally can't get a bank account. You can't get a Visa terminal. You can't process transactions. You can't do payroll. You can't do direct deposit. You can't get insurance. Like none of that stuff is, you've been sanctioned, right? None of that stuff is available. And then this administration extended that concept to apply it to tech founders, crypto founders, and then just generally political opponents. So, so that's been like super pernicious.
I wasn't aware of that.
Oh, 100%. And it's called, so it was Operation Choke Point 1.0 was 15 years ago against the pot and the guns. Choke Point 2.0 is primarily against their political enemies and then to their disfavored tech startups. And it's hit the tech world like we've had like 30 founders debanked in the last 4 years.
Really?
Yeah. It's been a big recurring pattern.
30.
But this is one of the reasons why we ended up supporting Trump. It's like we can't live in this world. We can't live in a world where somebody starts a company that's a completely legal thing and then they literally like get sanctioned.
Yeah.
Right?
So that's been happening. But so I put out a tweet this morning talking about my experience. It's not as a political opponent, but it's something I went through, right? So when I was 17, I got a bank account with Lloyd's. When I was, I think, 42, I get a phone call from a call center from Lloyd's. They say, "Hi, so-and-so from Lloyd's customer service. We want to ask you about a couple of transactions." I was like, well, okay, what do you, and like in my head, not thinking too much. They said, "Oh, on this date you transferred this to this company. What was it for?" And it was an exchange. It was to buy Bitcoin. I was like, and I said to them, am I under some kind of police investigation here? They said, no. I was like, okay, well, do I have to answer this? They said, no. I said, well, it's none of your business. I'm not answering this. And they said, okay. And phone call ended. Because I was thinking, oh, hold on, I'm a 42-year-old man. I pay my mortgage. My bank account's got money in. You're a call center person. Why the fuck am I telling you this? It's none of your fucking business. Yeah. If you think I've done something wrong, speak to the police. 2 days later, I got a letter from Lloyd's Bank. My bank account will be closed in 2 weeks. They closed my bank account. I was like, what the fuck? So I went to Metro Bank, right? Walked in. All I wanted was that was my personal and business accounts were closed down. I went to Metro Bank and I said, I need a bank account for my business. Filled in the forms. The podcast was called What Bitcoin Did. They refused my account because of the word Bitcoin. I was like, okay, this is annoying. So I went online. I got a Tide business account.
Yeah.
A few months in, I can't remember how long. Bosh, they closed down the account. They didn't tell me why. Last one, I went to Wise. I opened up a personal business. I was with them for about a year. They would do these weird things where I'd like get an invoice would be paid and they would write to me and say, who's this from? And I'd say, so-and-so. Do you have I'd have to send contracts to them. Yeah. They wanted to see the contracts. And then finally I got, one of my sponsors was Gemini, the exchange, got a 75 grand or something sponsorship thing paid. And they asked me about it. And I said, oh, it's a sponsor for my podcast. What's the podcast about? I said Bitcoin. Now, if you go in the Tides terms of business, and I knew their terms of business said, we will not allow you to transfer money in and out of exchanges. That's fine. I didn't need it. I just needed it to operate my business, make payroll and pay my bills.
Right.
Even though their terms of business had nothing to do with that, they said because the invoice was paid by a cryptocurrency exchange, they closed it down. But those was even worse. They froze my money.
Jeez.
Yeah, it's like, I've got to make fucking payroll. I've got to pay bills. And so finally I went with Revolut. Big up Revolut, no problem. But
all been good with Revolut. Interesting.
This is targeting of people based on just a Bitcoin thing.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I can't fucking believe I'm operating a successful, profitable business. I'm employing people and you're making my life difficult.
It's nuts. The thing is that it's partly this, it's partly sort of things that we don't know about, and it's definitely political as well. And so we did a lot of stuff with the FCA and campaigning and with the Treasury, and we've got like tens of thousands of people to write to them, and you know, the deplatforming, we've seen it obviously with PayPal, we've seen some of the GoFundMe things, we've seen interventions, but a lot of people didn't know about all of this. And I think these are the things that we have to keep pushing and making sure that we have our voices there and keeping them accountable. I've had some personal things as well. Can I run to the bathroom?
Yeah.
In the middle of the
have a piss break. We can do that.
Thanks.
Right, we're back. Let's go.
Great. So we should say as well, when we're talking about it, there's this parliamentary call for evidence on cash that I think everyone should go to. If you go to @TogetherDeck, you can see it on our Twitter or on our website. Basically, whether there's a need to regulate, mandate acceptance of physical cash in form of notes and coins, which I know people got these things about fiat currency and all of that, but I think that having cash, and cash is key. You get a wallet. There you go.
There you go.
Bosh. That's what we like to see. Cash is king. But it is really important, and it's not. You know, people sort of parody it a bit. They say it was just old people because they can't use apps, and it's for everyone, right? It's a really essential, important thing. I'd ask you, just in the context, how do you see it with Bitcoin? Can you just use it on, not you should be on the phones all the time, but on a phone, on an app, can you just make a phone call? Yeah, show me how it works. Show me how it works. Because this is the thing, I think a lot of people don't understand. I've got friends who will do it, but a lot of people in the general market don't really understand it.
I don't know if it's search for Wallet of Satoshi.
In my apps?
Yeah.
Wallet.
I mean, there's a lot to get into because there's like the technical rabbit hole of understanding it, and then there's the like economics rabbit hole of understanding why it matters.
Yeah.
Is there Wallet of Satoshi?
Yeah. Wallet of Satoshi,
right, download that. Let me... this is cool.
I'm going to get a download because it's going to show how bad I am at doing these things really fast. Right. So download that. Okay.
Right. And by the way, what I'm about to show you, I'll tell you a cool story. Me and Kurt were out in Lebanon.
Oh yeah,
making a film about the absolute crisis there, from government stealing money to inflation to the port explosion. But we went out for dinner with this I'm so bad with names. What was her name? Yeah, Samantha. Yeah, so we went out with her. She ran a charity that tries to get all the lights back on.
Saying the app's not available for some reason. Maybe I don't know why. Then I've tried to download it on the Apple Store. Let me just go on. Sorry, I want to listen to you, but. Do you want to have a go? Just like see why it's not going. Sorry. Yes, you're in.
No, you're not in the App Store. There, you're on.
Well, because it wasn't coming up in the App Store.
Oh, if it's not in the App Store, we'll find another one.
Let me.
Because I know they've got some issues in some places. Okay. Let's try. I'll find a bit. Where's a decent one? Oh yeah, let's try Moon. Oh, but that's MUUN. Yeah. Okay. MUUN, Moon Wallet.
Moon Wallet, yeah.
Anyway, so we're in their charity puts so nighttime Lebanon, because there's no money and they they destroy the electric the grid. They run a program where they connect grids, they connect generators to streets and get the lights back on, so businesses can open, so it's safer, and it's a great charity. Anyway, we're having dinner in this restaurant, and I was telling her about Bitcoin, and we I showed her the wallet, I sent her a bit, and then we put on the address on Twitter, and I said, oh, people, send us some money to show her. Was it $3,000, Kurt? Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just get ping. It's $3,000 came in. They went and lit another street with that money. It was fucking incredible. Right, is that, yeah?
Moon, so create a new wallet, yeah?
Yeah, just create the wallet. It'll be up to you to go down the rabbit hole afterwards and learn about this.
Yeah.
But I'll just send you a bit.
It's good to talk about this on here because... Mum's use Face ID now, yeah. Because some of my friends are really deep in it, and I just always wonder about how usable. So this is a good little experiment.
Click receive.
Yeah.
And I'll click.
Is it like AirDrop? You can just see me there. Or
well, no. I'll if you show me there'll be if you click skip, just skip on that for now. Right. Let's see we get that. So I'll do that. Okay, right. There we go. We'll send you. There we go. Send you $25. So that's pinged. Don't know how good the internet is here. So that's sent, and at some point that'll ping up there, your end.
Okay.
And so the great thing about this is that I can send it to you, you can send it to me. Now there is two types of wallets. There's custodial and non-custodial. Custodial means somebody is holding the money for you, a bit like PayPal. So in the exchange, if you go on Gemini or Coinbase and you buy Bitcoin, if you go back to your home, you'll see it pop in eventually.
Okay.
They're holding it for you, right?
Yeah.
But with something like a non-custodial, you're holding it and nobody can take it from you. You hold the private key, which is a long string of characters, which means you hold the key for that wallet. If I send that from
If I lose my phone, what happens?
So you have to back up the private keys.
Yeah, so in the cloud or something, but you have it written down analog as well, do you?
I have a very complicated way that I do things. Well, it's different things. My mobile wallet, I don't give a shit because I don't have enough on there. And then I have a small amount on maybe like a single hardware wallet.
Okay.
But that's again a small amount. And then my large amounts are called a multi-sig wallet where the keys are distributed.
Yeah.
But essentially, it's a long string of characters that you need to have hidden that no one knows. You'll go down this rabbit hole. You'll learn.
So when you have all that, just out of things like with Will and all, God forbid something happens and you like quickly a car hits someone or something, so you make sure that everyone knows that, or you're in your wheel and all that.
Yeah. So there is essentially given a treasure map.
Right, yeah.
So with the treasure map, nobody can get it while I'm alive. But when I'm dead, that treasure map, they can get to certain bits. But there are now companies providing services to move it on.
I see.
It's a real rabbit hole you go down because what you do with £100 of Bitcoin is different from what you do with 10 grand.
Yeah,
it's
sure.
different you do from 100 grand, 1 million, 10 million, 100 million. You have to change everything as and when you learn more and more, about
it's interesting, yeah.
But there's different things. There's the Bitcoin network, and part of the Bitcoin network is called the Lightning Network, which is faster transfer.
Would you say that if someone has got some money to save, they can either put a bit of real estate, they can put a bit in Bitcoin? Would you say spread your thing like others would say? Would you say just put it all in Bitcoin?
I'm all in Bitcoin.
Yeah.
I have a house,
Yeah.
but when I got my house, I got the lowest deposit possible with the longest term mortgage possible. Because the more money I'm putting into the mortgage, the less I can put into Bitcoin. Yeah. And Bitcoin will outperform every other asset.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
So why are you so adamant that Ethereum and others...
There you go. See it's come through?
Oh, right. So it has,
Yeah.
So just say it's got, so 0.000262009. So that's $25.
$25.
Yeah, $25. 19 pounds. Yeah. Great. So then I send it back to you.
No, don't worry. That's fine. Because now you've got an incentive to go and learn.
I will learn more about it. It's great. Yeah.
Yeah, you've got to go and learn why not to lose it.
Thank you. Yeah.
But so what I do is business, personal. I keep 3 months cash flow in pounds, and everything else is in Bitcoin. I mean, my football club's a great example, right? We raised $4.5 million from the Winklevoss brothers in dollars. I put the whole on Bitcoin. It's nearly 2 million quid up.
Wow.
And that's a tiny little football club. That's game changing for us.
But can I ask you as well, why Bedford? Is that where you grew up?
Yeah, I grew up in Bedford.
Okay.
Yeah. So we don't have, Bedford's never had a team in the Football League. Do you support a team?
Not anymore. A long time ago, I used to. I haven't been for lots of reasons. But yeah, no. So I'm not a big footy guy, but I've loved to see what's happened in Luton. I thought that was really inspiring and brilliant in many ways with what's gone on there. And so you're obviously like having an impact in your area where you grew up, and you want to have a positive influence. It's fantastic. Yeah.
Well, the football team.
It's a big deal to do that, right? To have a football team. I mean, that's a major thing.
Yeah.
Even a small one, right? It's big.
But I call it a cheat code. So basically, I said I'm going to buy this football club. I'm going to take it from the bottom, the 10th tier up to the Premier League. Obviously, everyone laughed at me, said I'm an idiot. You got a shitty little ground with 40 fans. I said I'm going to do it. It's a little plan. Yeah. Obviously, with the Bitcoin show, I went around to all the sponsors and said, "This is my plan. Will you sponsor us?" They all said yes. So I've got all these international Bitcoin companies sponsoring my shirts, and so we had a good budget.
Yeah.
For that. But also, we sell a shit ton of merch. Connor, how much merch do we sell?
Hundreds and hundreds of thousands.
Probably 250 grand since we've launched the team.
Wow.
2.5 years ago. I mean, Brilliant. We're step 6. We send shirts to Australia, to Lebanon, to Brazil, to America, because all the Bitcoiners, they've said, Bedford's our team now.
Great. I love it.
Every single game.
I've got to come and see the match. We'll have to come. I'd love to come down.
Well, we have a Bitcoin meetup before games.
Okay.
7th of December against Burko, we've got that. But every game, there's someone and they've come from Arkansas or Denmark.
Brilliant.
They come to the game. And now we've got the sponsorship. I mean, our treasury's got over 6 million quid in it. A lot of clubs at our level are struggling. That means we can plan for the future. But we're not going to spend that at the rate that is going to increase in value. So we've essentially got these long-term foundations. But the Bitcoin's Bitcoin's a gamble. The earlier you got to Bitcoin, the bigger the gamble, the bigger the reward.
Yeah.
And so, I'm fully in. I keep all my money in. I'm 100% convinced all these fiat currencies are going to die. I mean, we're going to go over 135% debt to GDP in the UK. That means...
When you say they're going to die, what do you think? What does that mean?
Well, I say die. I mean, it depends how they do it. Do they default? Probably no, because they'll probably drive massive inflation. We'll probably go through that 10% inflation we had recently. It's going to be nothing. I think we're going to have massive inflation, waves of it, unless they can get spending under control. Now, if a government comes in and says, fuck this, we're taking 25% off our budget, I think you've got a chance to survive because you can actually, and drive growth, you can start paying off the debt. So you restore faith in the currency. But they're not doing that. Conservatives didn't do it. Labour aren't doing it now. Who is?
So, yeah, I mean, I think this is part of having a proper economic strategy and policy that's going to done. And it's interesting with Donald Trump as well, because there's some things, but he's also quite obsessed with tariffs and things like that. So, it'll be interesting to see. But I hear the point you're making about it. It's interesting about overall strategy and planning. And I think some of the concerns people have had is it convenient, a sensible way of exchange? You've demonstrated a bit of that now, but you have to be in a certain kind of place to do things like that and do it in a certain way, and people's confidence levels, right? I mean, obviously it's an arbitrary thing at one level, like what's the agreement that's made, right? Divisible, usable and all of that, and then backed up by something. So yeah, it's fascinating. And to what extent an organization can use it, like you've said, when a lot of people around us have been doing it. I still don't understand entirely why not Bitcoin, why not other ones. Like the other one, there's loads. There's a
really easy answer to that. It's the only one that is meaningfully decentralized. So the way Bitcoin can evade governments and we have censorship resistance, which means I can send it to you, no one can stop me, and they can't close it down, is that it's decentralized. Yeah. So essentially, the mining, which processes builds the transactions and processes them, that's controlled by millions of computers around the world. So when China banned it, doesn't matter. Those computers go off, all the others do it, and that decentralization is what protects us from government. That allows us to build a money outside of government control. It allows us to have these hard rules of consensus in there that control how Bitcoin works. Ethereum, as an example, it is essentially centralized. It's centralized around the monetary policy, which they've changed. Loads. To be honest, I don't really pay too much attention to it, but it is not. It's not really censorship resistant. And so any of these other ones, if they're not meaningfully decentralized, then they're not doing the job of supporting censorship resistance. Also, Bitcoin has a first mover advantage. It's the first there. It's the one that's got the most trust. It's got the best developers. And so there can be hundreds of thousands of more cryptocurrencies. Bitcoin's the only one that matters. We actually say if it's not Bitcoin, it's a shitcoin. but don't be put off by price. Price will go up forever. It will always go up as more people go.
Well, they say that about property as well. Every 10 years it doubles in the UK. I'm not. If you get caught in the middle of it and you need to sell for some reason, that's the tricky thing. But yeah,
I say with this. So what will happen is you start with a little bit, and then a little bit more, and you get through your first 4 years. I call it your tour of duty because you go up and down on a roller coaster. Then you go through that boost, and then it's like, oh, I get it now, and this is easy. But here's a rabbit hole. My friend wrote a book called VJ Boyer Party. What was it called? The Bullish Case for Bitcoin. It's a good read. But he also did an article version. It's like 4 pages. It's worth a read.
Great.
And keep us away from these fucking CBDCs.
So we've been campaigning a lot against mandatory digital ID. There's some instances where some bits of digital ID are very useful, but mandatory digital ID that's linked to the state, particularly central bank digital currency. Obviously the digital dollar, digital yuan, we see all that coming down the line. Yeah. Programmable digital currency. Yeah. Where you have a situation where you might not have recycled your things, you might have said something on a podcast, and all of a sudden you're not going to get this thing, or you've used too much petrol this week, and all of a sudden you think, is this a social credit system? So the concerns with that as well, you could say, well, you're overblowing those concerns, but we've already seen some of the things that are happening, or how people have said, really what we could do is having that built into the car, and actually is all of a sudden you're just being controlled at every level by people who've got a very particular outlook. And if you don't subscribe to that view, we'll either put you in prison for saying something, or we might just limit your access to resources and everything. So these things are really essential to thrash out and debate much more. We've had campaigns on all of them. We continue to. It'd be good to get you speaking at one of the events, actually, I think.
The thing is, I'm a terrible speaker. When even explaining Bitcoin there, I can think of 100 people who can do it better than me. I just say, like, just buy it and you'll protect your money. Yeah. But no, I'll come and speak. Look, I'm here for this. It's like, I could have carried on doing this Bitcoin show. It was very successful. It was great. We've got a problem here in the UK. Yeah. It's fucked, right? I think there's those who've come to terms with it's being fucked and want to fight back, and those who haven't quite realized or accepted it, but they kind of know something's wrong, and then a bunch of weirdos who are just like really happy we're heading towards tyranny. I'm here for it. I'm here to support anyone you think can come on this pod you think's great. Send them my way.
Great.
Any events you've got, I'll be there. Anything we can do to support you, let me know. I mean, I've loved this conversation.
It's really good, Peter. Awesome, it's good to come on, and it'd be good to carry on the discussion. Yeah. I think the more that we can all get people discussing, and I try and remind people as well, because the free speech thing is important. Sometimes when we do events, people are so fed up with hearing some of the other things that the people in power have, that sometimes they want to just say, shut up. But we need to keep being bold and confident and not call people names. You go into a pub, if I come into your pub and start calling people names, saying you're just this...
I don't know, I call some of them commies.
Yeah, but it's not going to be... Well, that's a political affiliation. There may or may not be that. But, calling them stupid, right, or just all sheep, it's not really meaning that you're going to get to convince them or win them over or have the belief in our own ideas, because they'll do that. They'll say gammons to us or neo-Nazis. What it's doing is limiting things, right? We can have the confidence that we can convince people and win over people to like ideas, and that, and I think that's really important. This sitting down, discussing these things, working them out. And I'd like to encourage everyone to get involved together. I think you'll post some things up, but at Together Deck on Twitter and other places. But it's been great coming, and I think this is going to be good. We'll definitely send some people.
Yeah,
along.
please do. And fingers crossed. This will be a show that people come on, and if we get some of the politicians on as well.
Definitely. And we're gonna make Britain better. We're gonna change it, transform it, and it's up to all of us, right? So don't just be a passive viewer if you're watching or involved. Get involved and become a leader of it all.
Fuck yeah. All right, man. Well, listen, great to meet you.
Good stuff.
Let's definitely do this again, and thank you to everyone listening. See you soon. Bye.